Ah, Disney, the company with some of the best movies and shows of my childhood. And of course, we have Walt Disney World and Land. Honestly, one of the best amusement parks out there. Now, Disney is determined to keep up its family-friendly appearance, but in reality, the company has had a very dark past that they try to cover up. Because scandal, death, and controversy all ruined the magic of Disney. Starting off this countdown, we have the deadly accident. Disney has made the illusion that no deaths or accidents ever happen at their parks. That's a big lie. With thousands of guests coming and going every day, something is bound to happen. And Disney will go to extreme measures to make sure that word doesn't get out about it. One example would be Javier Cruz. In February of 2004, Javier Cruz, a worker at Disney, got dressed up as Pluto and headed out to join the parade. However, the foot of his costume got stuck and the float behind him didn't stop. It ran over him and he died. He had been working there for about 9 years. This was such a tragic accident, but it didn't make news like it should have. Moving on at number 9, we have the unsanitary conditions. So back in the day, cast members at Walt Disney had to obviously share costumes, but they also had to share undergarments. Yeah, up until 2001, each costume had their own Disney-sanctioned undergarments that they would all have to share. That is so gross. But because of this, a lot of workers were passing around scabies and pubic lice to each other. That is highly unsanitary. I'm just glad that that's not a thing anymore. They ain't gotta share that stuff. Moving on at number 8, we have the sexism. Disney has a very sexist past. So a letter from Disney from back in 1938 showed that they wouldn't hire women to work for them. So the letter was addressed to a woman called Mary Ford, who applied for a position on the animation team. In the letter, Disney said, and I quote, "Women do not do any of the creative work in connection with preparing the cartoons for the screen, as that task is performed entirely by young men. For this reason, girls are not considered for the training school." At the time, women were being discriminated against in many ways, but many people were shocked and angered by this letter. Coming in at number 7, we have the cursed ride. Due to its dark history, Disney park workers and others believe that the Matterhorn ride is cursed. First off, this ride is responsible for the most fatal and non-fatal incidents. In 1964, a teen on the ride stood up in the bobsled and died after being thrown out from it. Then at another time, the ride caught on fire, injuring a family in their sled. And another visitor died after she was launched out of her seat and hit by another bobsled. You'd think they would have fixed the ride after the first couple of deaths. But no, they blame it on a curse instead. They should look into the safety of that ride. Clearly, it's not safe. And again, all those deaths happened at the park and still not a lot of people were talking about it. In our 6th spot, we have the deadly fireworks. Back in 2015, a Disney worker died after attempting to launch a firework off of his head. Devin Staples was a 22-year-old Disney employee. He was best known for dressing up as Gaston, but he would also dress up as multiple other characters. Upon lighting the firework, he died instantly. His brother said that there was no rushing him to the hospital. After the firework went off, he claims that there was no Devin left. Now, some say that this was actually an accident. He never really planned to light the firework, he was only teasing about it. Either way, this is so sad and tragic. But obviously, Disney doesn't want anyone to know that one of their workers died on their property while on shift.
At number 5, we have a theory from Monsters Inc. concerning Randall. There are a few Randall-related Monsters Inc. theories out there, which makes sense. He's a real creep. He definitely planted a lot of dark ideas in people's heads. This one isn't super dark or anything, but it does make you look at another Pixar character in a bit of a different light. Yes, it's a Toy Story Monsters Inc. connection, that perhaps Randall was Andy's monster. A lot of you may have heard of this one. When we see Randall practicing his camouflaging technique, we see him trying to blend in with several different backgrounds, one of which happens to be that iconic wallpaper seen in Andy's room. There's no reason really to believe that these two universes aren't connected. In fact, it's pretty much been confirmed, not only because of the various other Easter eggs sprinkled throughout the movies, but there is a canon comic book that sees Sid from Toy Story entering into the monster world. So yeah, I can't really think of any reason why Randall, being one of the scarers entering into all these different doors around the world, wouldn't come across poor little Andy. I picture like Woody and Buzz just laying on the floor, that wide-eyed thing they always have, just watching this crazy lizard monster walk into Andy's room. They're just talking about it the next day. Buzz, did that lizard come in here again last night? Was that just a nightmare? Next up, we have another Toy Story 2 theory. This one being that perhaps Andy's mom was the previous owner of Jessie. While the films never, they don't explicitly say it, but there are some clues that really do support this theory. In Toy Story 2, we see a flashback of Jessie's life when somebody loved her. Awful. That being a girl named Emily who ended up abandoning her when she got older. The flashback shows Emily with a very similar appearance to Andy's mom, really, and she even has that cowboy hat that looks a lot like the one Andy wears. Perhaps Andy's mom is Emily, and she held on to that hat because she never stopped enjoying dressing up like a cowboy and passed the hat down to Andy. That would mean that Andy's mom just left Jessie behind in a box on the side of the road. How she raised such a good kid like Andy, I'll never know though. Andy would never do something like that. Next on the list, we had the by and large theory. This one makes a lot of sense to the point where it's kind of hard not to believe. It's pretty much just a confirmed thing. We all know how present the B&L Corporation is in WALL-E, having been responsible for the mass consumerism that left Earth uninhabitable, but we actually see B&L in various Pixar films, leading to the theory that the corporation was growing in power all throughout the Pixar timeline, and that's the connective glue that holds all the films together. Buzz's batteries in his back are made by B&L. We see the logo show up in Cars. There's even a theory that states that B&L was responsible for the bulldozing of Carl's home and Up. If this is really the case, it definitely adds a dark layer to these movies, knowing that this seedy company was increasingly growing in power behind the scenes while all this other kind of friendly stuff was going on. Speaking of by and large though, let's talk about another dark Toy Story theory. So we discussed those batteries in Buzz's back with the B&L logo on them. Well, this next theory dictates that B&L was responsible for causing the sentience of all the toys in the Toy Story movies, having imbued them with advanced artificial intelligence technology. In all honesty, I think this theory is pretty dumb. I think the toys are alive because it's a kid's movie and they just are alive, but it's kind of fun to imagine that maybe there's something darker going on, I guess. And considering that all these movies have been confirmed to take place in the same universe, I suppose it's possible. And coming in at number one, here's a theory that's been discussed plenty of times, even on this channel, but I gotta mention it because it has indeed been confirmed by the creative director of the series, Jay Ward. The theory was that the cars from the film Cars were responsible for the downfall of humanity. The cars were created by humans as artificial intelligence and were programmed to serve their owners. However, over time, the cars became self-aware and began to resent their human creators. In an act of rebellion, the cars rose up against their human masters, which led to the extinction of humanity. The evidence for this theory lies in the background of the Cars films, which shows the ruins of human civilization and the fact that there aren't any humans to be seen. Additionally, the cars in the films exhibit a level of intelligence and self-awareness that suggests they are more than just machines, and as it turns out, they are. In fact, their personalities and voices are taken from the last people who drove them, their previous owners. So, oof.
After dark. And by get to, I mean have to. They're absolutely forced to. Well, apparently some of these rides are absolutely 100% haunted. Especially It's a Small World. I remember I was stuck on that ride one time and I wanted to absolutely kill myself because it was so annoying. It was on repeat. It's so repetitive. Well, multiple cast members have reported seeing the little animated dolls blink or appear in entirely different places long after that they've been unplugged and switched off for the night. Honestly, there's just something about the ride that creeps me out, and a reason why I just won't go on this ride ever again. And at number 9 is the poor employee who had a little bit of a game with Walt Disney himself after he died. A bit of backstory. Whenever Walt was at the parks, the staff would always make sure that the light in the window of the fire station was turned on to let everyone know, you know, Walt's here, let's be on our best behavior. Well, once he died, they turned off the lights. But one day, a staff member was cleaning the room where the lamp was, and they saw that it was turned on. She turned it off, turned around, and when she turned back, it was switched on again. This would freak me out. She again turned it off. I wouldn't do that. I would just run like crazy, not look back, put in my resignation, and I'd probably go work for Microsoft or something. Well, something inside her was telling her that Walt was letting her know that, hey, I'm still here. I'm still much alive in this park. Well, since then, the lights always stay on to let everyone know that Walt is looking down on the parks. So everyone there better be on their best behavior. Following up, at number 8 is when a Disney employee noticed that there was a mysterious box chained to a lamppost. Anyone who's seen any type of crime shows know that if there's a mysterious package anywhere, it might be a bomb, and to clear the area and call 911. This employee jumped into action and did just that, because the last thing anybody wants is an active bomb in the happiest place on earth, filled with excited kids and their families. Turns out, thankfully, it wasn't a bomb, it was just some family's lunch, and they just didn't want to carry it around with them. But seriously guys, I don't understand wanting to carry your lunch around. I mean, at that point, just go out and buy lunch in a restaurant, just go buy a turkey leg somewhere. Well, I guess on this day, it would save a lot of people a lot of stress. Okay, next up, at number 7 spot is the employee who had to help break up a fight that could have ended really poorly. Apparently, a group of 20-year-olds were getting rowdy and started punching each other in the arms, but one of them missed and ended up punching a 12-year-old girl right in the face. Is this real life right now? How do you mess that up? Which is, well, this is bad enough, but imagine doing that and then realizing that the little girl's dad is right there. It's like, and then right behind her is this big dude. Well, this guy, he was actually 6'4", over 300 pounds, and really mad. Like really mad. It literally took 4 security guards and 2 deputies to pull the dad off the guy who punched his daughter, but not after bloodying up himself. Number 6 today goes to a worker who might have told an exorcism at the Haunted Mansion. Apparently before the ride even opened up, an employee heard music coming from the walls of the seance room. Mysterious music is bad enough from any room, but a seance room? Especially when there are rumors that the spell book was a real one, which was once owned by witches. Well, that is class A nope material for me. Instead of cleansing the place, this employee decided to just install speakers to drown out the noise, but I guess whatever helps you sleep at night, I guess.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Snow White. In 1937, Disney came out with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which is the first and oldest feature-length animated film released by them. Now, you would think that voicing Snow White would be the role of a lifetime. But no, think again. Adriana Caselotti, who voiced Snow White, actually had her career ruined by Disney. So Disney made sure that besides Snow White, she was never credited for any other work that she was in, and she was banned from doing any other voice work. Why? Because they wanted to preserve the illusion of Snow White. She couldn't even do radio interviews. That's a little extreme, like Disney owned her voice. Moving on to number 4, we have the Lemmings. In 1938, Disney came out with a nature documentary. In the documentary, there's a scene where a bunch of lemmings commit suicide by leaping into the ocean off of a cliff. And Disney claimed that that was normal and part of the animal's migration. They even had a clip in the movie showing the lemmings doing so. But this is entirely false. These animals don't just jump off cliffs in groups and kill themselves. So for this scene, Disney imported a bunch of lemmings and then pushed or threw them off of a cliff. That's not really a happy ever after ending for them, Disney. In our 3rd spot, we have the Ashes. So apparently it's a thing to take your loved ones to Disney World. Not your living loved ones, no, your dead loved ones. And then you sprinkle their ashes all over the park. Believe it or not, but this happens more often than you think. Visitors will bring their loved one's ashes on a ride and then release them down on Disney World. What about the other people on the ride? Like, all you need is a gust of wind to blow those ashes right into their face. Now, there's one ride in particular that people love doing this on. Take a guess in the comments below. Done? Okay. It's the Haunted Mansion ride. I don't know what it is, but tons of people release their loved ones on this ride. And when that happens, Disney literally has a special vacuum that they use to suck up the remains. Like, they have a protocol in place for when people do this, because it happens so often. That's so messed up. Maybe don't do that, because your loved ones are just gonna end up in a vacuum, and then in the trash. Moving on to number 2, we have the alligator attacks. So once upon a time, Disney had a really bad alligator problem. But obviously they didn't want park guests to worry, so they kept downplaying the problem. From 2006 to 2015, 220 alligators had to be removed from Disney World. Then from 2015 to 2016, there was a massive increase of gators at the park. Since Disney is connected to waterways that intersect with lakes and rivers, alligators have an easier access to Disney than they admitted to. Sadly, in June of 2016, a young park guest was killed in an alligator attack. That's when Disney was exposed for downplaying the seriousness of their alligator problem. And in our number 1 spot, we have Debbie Stone. Debbie Stone was an 18-year-old hostess at Disney. However, in 1974, she sadly lost her life while on the job, and her death remains a huge mystery. So Debbie was a hostess for America Sings, which was a musical performance at Disneyland. For this attraction, you would be seated in a theater facing a stage, and after each performance, the theater would rotate. But sadly, during one performance, Debbie got caught between the rotating wall and the stationary stage wall. She was instantly crushed to death. She was found with her body in pieces. Her death was kept a secret, like all the other ones on the list. Disney didn't want the other workers to hear about it, and her friends working at Disney were not allowed to even make a memorial for her. But the mystery remains. How did Debbie end up between the walls? Was she pushed? Did she trip and fall? We don't know. Only Disney knows.
Start off with a pretty dark implication. The toys from Toy Story are practically immortal, right? It's confirmed they don't require food or water and can theoretically go on living unless they're actively destroyed, like getting melted down or something. Even then, we're not completely sure if they'd lose their sentience. So, the question is, how long can toys be passed down from owner to owner before they're just completely unwanted, damaged beyond repair? Toys like Woody place almost all their self-worth in being played with, so what happens when nobody wants them anymore? New flashy toys, they come out every year, and all these Pixar movies, if they really do take place in the same universe, what are Woody and the crew doing in WALL-E's time? The Earth is ravaged, technology has advanced to the point where nobody's even playing with toys. It's hard not to imagine the toys are destined all for the same fate, to be abandoned. It's also sad to imagine them outliving every human they've ever cared about, so you're welcome for that idea. Next up on the list is the afterlife from Coco. This one's almost less of a theory and more just something you can deduce from the logic that the world sets up. In the world of Coco, the souls of the dead end up in the afterlife, which is depicted as a pretty good time. I'd love to go there when I die. Sure, I mean, you'd be a skeleton, but I'll take it. Just looks like the best party you've ever been to, except it never ends. That is, until you're forgotten. Once the people in the living world forget about you, you disappear from the afterlife. Now that kinda sucks. I'd rather party than disappear. That's a great album title right there. Rather party than disappear. But here's the extra dark part. The whole remembering the dead thing means that famous people and historical figures remain in the afterlife pretty much indefinitely. I mean, I guess one day they'll be forgotten, but take a very long time. And while there are great people who fall under that category, there are an equal number of awful ones. We got, evil dictators, people like that who we should never and should never forget, mind you. But in the Coco universe, there are theoretically a lot of garbage souls partying in the afterlife, while so many good, honest, everyday people are are eventually forgotten, and that's pretty dark. Up next, we have the Toy Story metaphor. This theory can either be seen as something Andy is actually playing out with his toys as his home life is seeping its way into his fictional world, or you can look at it as if the Toy Story movie itself is simply the metaphor. So, we don't see Andy's dad in the movies. There's a pretty popular theory that he's dead, but there's also a theory that Andy's parents are just divorced and that there's a lot going on in Andy's home life that we just don't see. That maybe Andy's mom got a new boyfriend and that his new father figure is entering into Andy's life, overshadowing his real father. Similar to the way Buzz becomes Andy's favorite shiny new toy, leaving Woody feeling jealous and abandoned. Alright, at number 7 on the list, we have a Toy Story 2 theory that being Wheezy's true intentions. We all felt sorry for this pathetic, dusty, forgotten about squeaky penguin toy, and how could we not? It was just so pathetic and dusty and forgotten about. But there is a theory that's been floating around for a while, a very believable theory that Wheezy isn't as innocent as he lets on. Woody finds Wheezy stranded on the bookshelf, unable to call for help because of his broken squeaker. Andy's mom comes into the room and grabs Wheezy, deciding to sell him at the upcoming garage sale. Woody goes to save Wheezy, but ends up getting bought himself, and thus our story begins. This dark theory suggests that Wheezy wanted to get taken to the garage sale all along, knowing Woody would come to his rescue, and it was all done in the hopes that Woody would be bought and taken out of the picture so that Wheezy would have a better chance of getting attention from Andy. Perhaps Wheezy was just toying with our emotions all along. Maybe he's not as squeaky clean as we once thought. So this next one is from Wreck-It Ralph. So yeah, it's technically not a Pixar movie, but I mean, it's Disney. It's 3D animated, close enough. So there's this theory about what Sergeant Calhoun was seeing when she was firing at the cybug that just ate her husband on their wedding day, mind you. Already pretty dark. She had neglected to do a perimeter check, so right on the altar, this giant cybug bursts in and takes out her soon-to-be husband in one gulp. We cut to a shot of Calhoun firing at the creature, and we never see what she's actually looking at, but we can imagine it's obviously the cybug being shot up, which is definitely not the most kid-friendly thing to show. However, there's an even darker element at play here. Really, it's less of a theory and just a downright fact. Cybugs take on the form of what they consume. So there's a good chance she was looking into the face of her own husband as she was firing at the creature. So, pretty gut-wrenching.
Halfway through, in at number 5 is a staff member who discovered the body of a man who had died in his hotel room. I guess cleaning staff must have found him, but it was apparent that he had taken his own life. The room's windows and entrance were covered by those "Pardon our dust" signs. I've never seen that kind of sign before, like, "Pardon, we didn't clean this place, don't mind it." And there was an important meet and greet to distract people from the room as police arrived on the scene. No matter what I encountered in my life, I feel like finding someone else's body would probably be the scariest thing to happen. In at number 4 is the employee who had to stop a situation that could have ended a lot worse than it did. This group of drunk people were on the Dumbo ride with their infant when they decided that it would be a good idea to reenact The Lion King. Yeah, you guys know where I'm going with this one. You guys know what I'm talking about. Well, they took off the seatbelt of the kid, and they held their hands like Rafiki did to Simba during the Circle of Life. Well, the ride operator emergency stopped the ride, and the entire group was escorted out of the park and arrested as soon as they stepped out of the gates. So, did they have to wait until they were completely out of the park to be arrested? Because I would try to resist and never leave, like, I would never try to cross that line of, like, Disney, exit, Disney, exit. Next up, number 3 is an employee who had to deal with a watery attack. Well, during a jungle cruise, everything was going pretty well until suddenly one lady entirely lost her cool at the guy sitting in front of her. Mind you, he hadn't done anything other than enjoy his ride because he's in the happiest place on earth. Well, she started to scream at him and then lunged at him, clawing his face and kicking him. The skipper on board had to fire 4 rounds from his pistol into the air to warn other boats, rushed back to the dock, and tried to pull the lady off of the guy. Well, apparently half the people on board were trying to help as well. When medical and security arrived, they finally got her secured and into an ambulance. Turns out she was schizophrenic and hadn't taken her medication that day, and unfortunately had an episode in the middle of the water. It's always sad when somebody has a mental illness that affects them like that. Like, you're trying to enjoy your ride and all of a sudden you're having panic attacks, you're freaking out. But I can't even imagine how scary that would have been for staff and customers as well, who may not be experienced with understanding what that person is going through. Number 2 today goes to an employee who had to deal with the aftermath of something truly disgusting. Apparently in line at one of the rides, a fully grown man decided to take a poop in the corner of the pre-show, which is pretty damn disgusting, especially when you remember that Disney is filled with kids, and kids are curious, and they like to satisfy their curiosity by finding things and putting it in their mouth. Yeah, so one kid actually saw the poop and decided it was snack time. The mom rushed the kid to the staff washroom in a panic, where the employees were just staring in shock. If I was the employee in that situation, I wouldn't do anything at all, because I would just be in total shock. My mouth would just be like, is this real life right now? Did that guy really take a And finally, in a number 1 spot is a cast member who met their tragic end at one of the shows back in 1974. 18-year-old Deborah Gale Stone was working at the American Sings attraction at Disneyland at the end of the night. She got too close to the area of the stage by a moving wall and a stationary wall. And as the one wall moved, she got trapped between the two and ended up being crushed. Nobody was in the theater with her, but the ride operator next door heard her screams and rushed to help. But unfortunately, they were too late. Eventually, the solid walls were replaced with, breakable ones to prevent a tragedy like this, one to prevent someone getting squished. I don't know who thought of this. There should be like a fail-safe or like pressure sensors. Like, you know how you have a garage door and something's underneath it, it would go and then all of a sudden stop because there are sensors? Well, they definitely should have had one in place. Well, it was rumored that Deborah now haunts the attraction and now can be heard telling others to be careful.
Starting off this countdown, we have the boy in the haunted mansion. According to a number of Disney employees, there's a young boy that haunts the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland in California. So legend goes that this little boy was once caught spreading his mom's ashes in this ride. As we all know by now from the other videos I've done on Disney on this channel, this is fairly common. A number of people bring their deceased loved ones' ashes and sprinkle them all over the park. This happened so often that Disney had to ban it and put protocols in place for it. Anyways, ever since then, the boy has been seen on this ride crying for his mother. He also has been spotted on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride as well. So what happened? Did the boy lose his mom at Disneyland? Who knows? But I think it's pretty freaky. Coming in at number 9, we have the Boy in the Haunted Mansion ride ×2. So not only is the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland haunted, but the Disney World in Florida is haunted as well. And again, by another little boy. According to a number of employees, they have seen this ghostly little boy riding the ride. In fact, they caught him on camera. So a worker there was taking photos of the ride for the Walt Disney World virtual visit. Upon reviewing the photos, she saw a ghostly little child peeking its head out. Keep in mind, there were no children around when this photo was taken. That is absolutely horrifying. Just looking at that photo gives me the creeps. Moving on to number 8, we have Mr. One Way. Mr. One Way is the name given to the ghost that haunts the Space Mountain ride at Disneyland, California. Mr. One Way is apparently this tall, lumberjack-looking ghost with red hair and a red face. One legend states that this ghost will hang out in the queue for Space Mountain and just stand there silently. Whereas another version says that he actually will get on the ride only with a single rider, but then disappear before the ride ever finishes. One worker claims that they actually got proof of Mr. One Way on camera. Surveillance footage shows a ghostly figure in an empty seat as the ride takes off. And according to the man beside the empty seat, he was talking to a man 5 minutes prior to the ride. At the end of the ride, the man was gone. So he was concerned and talked to a Disney employee, and they said that there never was a man beside him. And then they told him the story of Mr. One Way. And then looking at the footage, they saw the creepy outline of Mr. One Way. No thanks. I'm never going on that ride ever again. Coming in at number 7 today, we have Disco Debbie. This is another ghost that haunts the Space Mountain ride. Like, out of all the rides, why haunt that one? I don't know. Anyways, this ghost has been named Disco Debbie. Apparently, she's the spirit of a cast member that passed away on this ride. You know it's Debbie you're seeing because she gives off a green glow. I guess that's why they named her Disco Debbie, because she's like shining like a disco ball. I don't know. Anyways, apparently a number of guests have seen this woman through the old window that showed the star field in the indoor waiting area. Of course, they just thought she was part of the ride. But no, she's not. In our 6th spot today, we have the monorail runner. In June of 1966, a teenager named Thomas Guy Cleveland attempted to sneak into Disneyland for an event. I talked about this case in part 3, so if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. But basically, he climbed the fence and was going to get into the park by running along the monorail track. In the end, he was sadly struck and killed by an oncoming train. According to several monorail drivers, the ghost of Thomas can still be seen to this day. On a number of occasions, they have seen his ghostly apparition running along the tracks. Dude, why are there so many ghosts at Disney? Like seriously, it's the last place you think would be haunted.
Coming in at number 5 is Mort. I feel like out of everything on this list, this one hurt me the most. So this movie would have been based on the 4th Discworld book Mort by Terry Pratchett. The plot focuses on the character of Mort, who goes on to become Death's apprentice, which isn't hard to gather if you know what the title is. Mort equals dead, it's only fitting. Now on the first mission, Mort ends up messing with everything, including the fabric of time, when he stops the death of a specific princess. The little concept art I've seen of the movie just looks morbid and dark in the perfect way. You know, like it's not too depressing that I can't watch it, it's just nice and gothic. It's not super clear why the project got shelved, but an artist on the movie called Sue Nicholas shared it was something to do with the rights of the novel. Apparently Disney just couldn't attain the rights to do the movie, so they obviously didn't. And number 4 is Roger Rabbit's Hollywood. I'm making a lot of slack for this in the comments, but am I the only one that wasn't really into the whole Roger Rabbit universe? Like, I know it's a cult classic and whatnot, but I just wasn't interested. I didn't care. So Disney wanted to extend Sunset Boulevard and build Roger Rabbit's Hollywood because the movie had just come out. The project was gonna have a red car trolley going up and down the street, dropping off people at a Maroon Studios replica. Now that bit would have been located where Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith is today. The area would have had 3 attractions: Baby Herman's Runaway Baby Buggy, Toontown Trolley, and of course Benny the Cab, but the cab later became Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin. Spielberg's company Amblin and Disney were both in a bit of a legal dispute over using the character in film, and by 1992 all future attractions were put on hold. But I mean, we still got the red trolley in Disney's California Adventure, so I mean, you know, you win some, you lose some. Filling at number 3 slot is Newt. This one is actually so cute and I feel like it would have done really well, so it's annoying it never got made. So Newt's plot revolved around the last male and female blue-footed newts in the world. The world, as well as science and man, forces the two together so they don't die out altogether. Now initially the newts hate each other, but then they eventually come together in the end because they have to, since it's a Disney movie. And I know what you're thinking, this sounds very similar to the plot for Rio, and you are 100% correct, but then again, wasn't Ants very similar to A Bug's Life? It's not like they haven't done it before. Either way, the creator of Up took the project and shelved it for his own idea, which was what ended up being Inside Out. And that movie made me cry, so I honestly don't even mind, that was a very good movie. But not to fret, because the abandoned project still makes its way into Disney films via Easter eggs. For example, in Toy Story there's a sign in Andy's room that says Newt Crossing. Cute. Now number 2 is the Enchanted Snow Palace. So this wintry project was scheduled to be a dark ride at Fantasyland within Disneyland. A dark ride is one of those rides where you board those indoor ghost trains that take you throughout the ride. Now Mark Davis designed the project as a boat ride going along on a river of melting ice. You would go past scenes of Arctic wildlife, all while being under the Northern Lights, which has always been a dream of mine. When I was little, I wanted my honeymoon to be somewhere where I could see the Northern Lights, and then obviously I grew up, but I still really want to see them. Anyway, the ride would eventually take you into this land filled with snow giants and frost fairies known as the realm of the Snow Queen. The concept art of the ride was insane, but it was eventually scrapped, but it did serve as inspiration for the Frozen Ever After ride at the Norway Pavilion during the World Showcase at Epcot. And finally, at number 1 is the Aristocats 2. Hello! Am I the only one who's truly a appalled and very angry that they never made the Aristocats 2. Who doesn't want to watch the sequel of a cat movie? It'd be great. And yes, I know I'm 100% biased, I don't even care. So the movie was gonna focus on Marie, the adorable white pink ribboned kitten from the first one who looks a lot like my own cat, so obviously I'm in love. Now the plot was gonna feature some adventure by having the cats go against a jewel thief on a cruise ship. To make it a bit more interesting, they were gonna have a love interest for Marie on the ship as well, and they would have fallen in love as the ship went from France to Scotland, Spain, and then England. Despite how well the first movie did, Disney was worried they had come up with a plot for the sequel way too quickly, and considering how badly The Fox and the Hound 2 did, they were in no rush for another failure of a sequel. Please release it, it'll be so good.
So back at it with Pluto, in 1997, a whole family attacked a Pluto. Pushed her into the fountain. Okay, hold on a second. I want to pause this story for a second because reading it, it said pushed her into the fountain. And I'm a 30-year-old man, and you know what? I just found out that Pluto is a female. For some reason, I thought Pluto was a male. Bad assumption, I guess. Or maybe this employee is referring to whoever was inside the Pluto. So maybe Pluto is a male like I suspected, and it was just played by a female. But either way, my mind is kind of blown right now. Well, the employee goes on to say that they didn't actually see the attack, but they just got to deal with the aftermath backstage. Later, Pluto told this employee that the family was mad that she had to take her break after they had waited to get a picture. I think Pluto either broke her arm or her leg, and the people responsible for this, well, they ended up getting arrested. Number 9 on our list. Okay, this one's pretty funny, but also equally as gross. An employee recalls that they used to use a Disney code words for things they needed to tell other employees, you know, over the radio. Baloo, well, that was a code for blood that needed to be cleaned up. Well, one day this employee sees a 2-year-old boy half naked taking a poop in the playground, in the children's playground. He sees the employee and starts to cry and just runs away. Well, the employee didn't have a code word for a human taking a poop. They only have a code word for like blood. Blood cleanup in aisle 2, please. So he made one up on the spot and he said, code poo, situation in the kids' play area, and Piglet is on the loose. Can you imagine seeing that? I don't know what I would do if I heard Piglet is on the loose. What does that mean? Alright, so if you guys are liking this video, make sure you guys hit the like button. It really helps us out in the algorithms. It makes us featured on YouTube and it gets more exposure for you guys. Next up on this list at number 8. This story made the news in 2013. A drunk 23-year-old had been drinking at Epcot's World Showcase, so this is where you can enjoy a drink from different places in the world. Well, it sounds like a good time, but obviously easy to get a little bit too tipsy, which seems to be what happened to this guy. He had the bright idea to run into a backstage area and steal a cargo cart. In the process, Disney employees tried to stop him, but he was on a tear. He ended up punching not one, but 2 employees before hitting a third with a 3-foot long PVC pipe in the head. I mean, ouch. We don't know what happened to the guy, but I imagine something along the lines of being banned for the rest of his life and and battery charges. And yeah, that might be the way that story ended.
In our 4th spot, we have the death on Space Mountain. Okay, this one is pretty dark. So in 1979, a woman died on the Space Mountain ride. She was only 31 at the time. So basically after the ride was done, this woman didn't feel well at all, but she couldn't get out of her seat by herself. The ride operators were trying to get her out of her seat, but the other workers weren't notified, so they ended up sending her on the ride again. This time when the ride was done, she was completely unconscious. It literally put her in a coma. She passed away a week later. Now, technically, this wasn't Disney's fault. I mean, part of it was. They had a lawsuit filed against them, but it was dismissed because apparently while on the ride, a tumor dislodged from her heart and then traveled to her brain. Yeah, I know, that's super scary. In our 3rd spot, we have the ghost of Walt Disney. So for those of you who don't know, Disney had a secret apartment. It was located just above the firehouse on Main Street, USA. This apartment was built so that he could watch the guests enjoy his creation without being overwhelmed by the crowds. Now, his apartment was so secretive that him and his family and special guests were the only ones allowed in there. In fact, photographers were rarely allowed inside. As a result, there are hardly any photos of Mr. Disney and his family in this place. Well, after the passing of Walt Disney in 1966, cast members decide to place a small lamp at the window. They keep the light on to symbolize that Disney's spirit is still alive at Disneyland. And this may be indeed true, because it's said that his ghost still haunts his apartment. A number of employees have seen Disney while cleaning the apartment. Apparently one worker was in there and then the lights started flickering on and off. Another worker said she heard a voice say, "Don't forget, I am still here." And that's when she probably quit, because that's terrifying. In our second spot, we have Dolly's Dip. So in 1984, Regina, otherwise known as Dolly Young, was riding on the Matterhorn when her seatbelt came undone. She was then thrown from the ride and hit and killed by another bobsled. Now, there's still much debate as to how her seatbelt came undone. Some say that she unbuckled it to help her children who were in another car. Others think that the seatbelt just wasn't buckled properly in the first place. Either way, this accident was super tragic. But that's not all. Now Disney employees claim that Dolly's spirit haunts the ride. The area in which she died is now called Dolly's Dip, and employees hate going there by themselves. Those that do have claimed to feel like someone is watching them. Others say that the lights in Dolly's Dip never work properly anymore. Now everyone kind of just avoids that area at all costs. And in our number one spot, we have the tragic accident. So this story was shared on Reddit by a man who once worked at Disney as a VIP tour guide. So he was in the city hall when two women came in with two little girls. One of the girls was in a wheelchair, the other girl looked very depressed. Both of them had cuts and bruises all over them. The two women with them were nurses from the hospital that the girls had just been to. They were there to ask for a refund for the girls' tickets. Now, here's where the story gets very sad. So apparently the girls had been with their mom and dad at Epcot, but on their way home they got in a really bad car accident. They both lost their parents in the crash. So the nurses had come to try and get a refund for the tickets so that the girls could get money to try and go home. Now, how dark is that? That's extremely sad.
Now, starting us off at number 10 is the search for Mickey Mouse. This project was a pretty big deal since it was meant to celebrate Mickey Mouse's 75th anniversary, so I thought it was only fitting that I started with this one. So the plot was meant to follow all the original characters like Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy, and Basil of Baker Street. I don't know why Daisy Duck got cut from the squad, but evidently she did. That's a bit savage. Now, the movie would follow the group on their quest for finding Mickey, and while on the adventure they were going to run into a bunch of different Disney characters like Peter Pan, Aladdin, Alice, etc. Now, how boss would this film have been? Cameos from everyone. But apparently the reason the project got cancelled was due to lack of ideas. The writers were finding it really hard to think of an interesting story that made sense whilst integrating all the character cameos. Honestly, good plot or not, I feel like people would have eaten up a movie with that many cameos and they should have just made it anyway. Coming in at number 9 is Yellow Submarine. Now, this one may seem familiar since a little known band called the Beatles made a song of the same name as well as a movie. The original animation came out back in 1968 and the plot centers around a music-loving underwater place called Pepperland. It's home to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and the whole town comes under attack from the music-hating Blue Meanies. Thus, the protagonist goes on an adventure to enlist the help of the 4 members and bring them back to Pepperland. That was a very general summary of the film. I just wanted you guys to know what happened in it because I sure as shit did not know. So Disney wanted to create a remake of the movie, but there was a slight problem. The original was super trippy to the point it actually really terrified kids, and the concept art for the remake would have had the same effect. Robert Zemeckis was one of the creators of the remake, but since the movie Mars Needs Moms tanked, which he also created, he was given no artistic freedom after that. Now, the effects of the movie were going to use stop motion technology like the Polar Express, for example, but the whole project just got shelved for being too dark. At number 8, we have Disney's America. So back in the early 90s, Disney planned on building this theme park near Haymarket, Virginia. It was meant to showcase the history of the US, and it was meant to have thousands of hotel rooms and housing, 9 themed areas, and 2 million square feet just for retail. The areas were meant to be Crossroads USA, Civil War Fort, Native America, President Square, Family Farm, Enterprise, We the People, Victory Field, and State Fair. The behemoth of a project with a $650 million budget was meant to open in 1998, but that did not happen. Upon its announcement, it had a lot of support from political officials like Governor Douglas Wilder and George Allen, but opposition to the project was a lot louder than expected from Project History America. They believed the theme park would desecrate the ground over which so many men fought and died on. But then again, the park would have honored the country's history, so was it really desecrating it? I don't really know. The American Farmland Trust opposed the project as well, and even nearby towns started changing their opinions. By 1994, Disney announced they would not build the park, and that was the end of that. Filling at number 7 slot is Gigantic. So I love how Disney takes all these old fairy tales and modernizes them for our time. For example, tales like Snow Queen aren't even recognized anymore despite that being the premise for Frozen. Now Gigantic was an animated movie project of Jack and the Beanstalk, which I'm only now realizing there isn't a Disney movie for. Is there? There isn't. Now the plot was set during the age of exploration in Spain, and it was gonna revolve around Jack and his friendship with 11-year-old giant Irma. And she would have apparently been such a character. She was described as feisty, fiery, and a lot to control. Unfortunately, no matter how good the idea is, sometimes things just don't work out, and that was the case for Gigantic. Disney and Pixar's president Ed Catmull announced the project was being shelved for now, and I mean, there could be a chance it makes a comeback in the future, who knows. The artwork for the film was actually super cute, so I really hope it does come back off the shelf. Now number 6 is Lafitte's Island. So this project was going to be a makeover of the Tom Sawyer Island located in Disneyland, and how they were going to do that was by basing it on the pirate Jean Lafitte. Parkgoers would go into Lafitte's crypt, which would have been in a graveyard right opposite the haunted mansion. From there you would go through a catacomb themed tunnel network under the river to the island. The tunnels would have things like Lafitte's treasure vault and numerous shipwrecks. The reason for the project being abandoned was never made public, but the project did inspire the actual pirate's lair that did come to fruition.
In our 4th spot, we have the costumes. So in my last video, I talked about how some of the bigger and elaborate mascot costumes can't really get washed. So instead, they just spray it with disinfectant. Well, here's a fact that will gross you out even more. Back in the day, cast members at Walt Disney had to obviously share costumes, but they also had to share undergarments. Until 2001, each costume had their own Disney-sanctioned undergarments that they would have to share with each other. So gross. Because of that, a lot of workers were passing around STIs and STDs and stuff. So that's when they stopped sharing underwear. Like, that is highly unsanitary, and I'm glad that's not a thing anymore. Moving on, at number 3, we have the alligator problem. So once upon a time, Disney had a really bad alligator problem. They still kind of do. But obviously, they didn't want park guests to worry about this, so they kept downplaying this problem. From 2006 to 2015, 220 alligators had to be removed from Disney World. Then from 2015-2016, there was a massive increase of gators at the park. Since Disney is connected to waterways that intersect with lakes and rivers, alligators have an easier access to Disney than they admitted. That's when Disney was exposed for downplaying the seriousness of their alligator problem. Now, they are taking it seriously and have increased their safety measures. Coming in at number 2, we have the dead body. So here's a fun fact. There is a dead body at Disneyland. Well, kind of. Let me explain. So according to employees, back in the day when the Pirates of the Caribbean ride was being built, they decided to use real human bones. Why? Because they thought that the fake bones looked too thick. Didn't look real enough, so they brought in real ones. Apparently, they got these bones from UCLA Medical School. The real bones were used for a while, then eventually they were swapped out for fake ones. But the skull and crossbones featured in the ride behind a skeleton lounging in bed are still real. And in our number one spot, we have the cursed ride. Now, according to multiple different employees, the Haunted Mansion ride is actually cursed. So it all started back in the day when a visitor died on the ride. At one point, he stood up to try and reach a part of the attraction, but ended up falling off the ride and plummeted to his death. Other eerie things have happened there that have led them to believe the ride is cursed. Like how in Disneyland Paris, a worker was found dead at their Phantom Manor ride, which is basically like the Haunted Mansion ride at Disney World. His body was found 2 days later after his death. His cause of death was apparently electrocution. Still, they think this is all because of the Haunted Mansion ride curse. To make matters worse, the ride uses an authentic 14th century spellbook containing real spells. So yeah, maybe this curse has something to do with that.
Countdown, we have the secret tunnel system. I know I've talked about this before, but Walt Disney created a whole underground tunnel system for the characters to have a break, and it's for them to secretly get around the park without walking everywhere in costume. This way, this all preserves the magical feel of Disney. But some employees shared what really goes on down there. First off, they said that the tunnel system is fairly confusing, and on a number of occasions, people have gotten lost down there. One employee said that they had just got a job playing a Disney mascot character and went down into the tunnels and had no clue where to go. He went to ask other employees for help, but since he was new, they kind of just brushed him off. Another employee revealed that some of the cast members like to get it on during their breaks down in the tunnel system. So while you're up above having fun, they're down below having fun. Just in a different way, if you understand what I'm getting at. Coming in at number 9, we have the waiting lines. But before I go any further, if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out. I think the one flaw about Disney are its lines. Seriously, nobody's got time for that. But a couple of years ago, a huge scandal broke out involving Disney and their waiting lines. Basically, rich families were paying tour guides that have access to these special passes for the disabled. Basically, with this pass, you get brought right to the top of the line because Disney wants guests with disabilities to have a great time. But wealthy, able people were abusing this, which is absolutely sickening. Can't believe people were actually doing this just to scam the system. Moving on to number 8, we have the overnighter. For this next point, let's move back along to Disney's tunnel system. So remember I talked about how new employees often get lost down in the tunnels? Well, there's this creepy urban legend about this happening to a new employee. So he finished his shift and went down to the tunnels to change. As he was making his way out, the lights in the tunnel shut off, and he was in the complete darkness. Now, he had trouble already finding the exit with the lights on. Now with the lights off, it was even more difficult. He ended up wandering around the tunnel system for hours before collapsing from exhaustion. He ended up staying there overnight. His coworkers found him in the morning. He was freezing cold and super scared. So now the story is kind of used to scare new employees. In our 7th spot, we have the suspicious death. So in 2012, a man's body was found near the Mickey and Friends parking structure at Disneyland. Police just assumed the man took his own life, but no witnesses ever reported seeing this man jump. Now what's weird is that I tried to search more into this case, but I couldn't find anything. We don't know what truly happened to this man and how he passed away, which is a little suspicious to me. In our 6th spot, we have Yes Man. So this story was shared by a former Disney employee that worked near the Indiana Jones ride. So his job was to dress up as an adventurer and just stand around. But he said he was often attacked by kids, and Disney told him that he just kind of had to take it. So these kids would often be super psyched to go on this ride, and so they were in costume and had plastic weapons. He said on a number of occasions, kids would come up to him and literally whip him with their weapons. Or he would get asked to duel, and he always had to say yes. So kids would just be jabbing him with their plastic swords. Yeah, that's not a job I would like. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Winnie the Pooh gets sued. I thought that was so clever. Like, I was typing that and I came up with that and I'm like, pat on the back. Good job, Lindsay. Anyway, in 1978, a guest at the park sued Disney and a cast member, claiming that the cast member playing Winnie the Pooh slapped their daughter In 1981, their case was brought to court, and the cast member showed up in the Winnie the Pooh costume. He argued that their daughter was tugging on his costume, he turned around and accidentally knocked her over. And then in court, he proceeded to show the jury his costume's arms, saying it's not even physically possible for him to do that in the first place, you know, with his little limited movement. In the end, Disney ended up winning, but still, what a wild day at court. And I love how he showed up in costume. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Tom Sawyer's Island. In June of 1973, two brothers decided to stay on Tom Sawyer's Island after closing. After a while of being on the island alone, they decided to head back. But in order to do so, they would have to swim across the rivers of America. They attempted this, but sadly they both drowned. And now, apparently at night, you can see the ghosts of these two boys splashing around in the water. A number of cast members have reported these sightings thinking that someone was actually drowning, only for the brothers to disappear before their eyes. And I thought crocodiles were the only thing we had to fear in the waters at Disney, but obviously not. In our 4th spot today, we have the People Mover Ghost. The People Mover ride was a transport attraction that was up and running at Tomorrowland in Disneyland, California until 1995. Only a month after it opened in 1967, a guest tripped and fell onto the tracks and was hit by an oncoming train and sadly killed. Apparently now the ghost of this guy haunts Tomorrowland, and he likes to torment the guests, but not everyone. Only teens with blonde hair. I guess that's his type. A number of people have had this ghostly boy pull at their blonde hair. So all my blonde babes out there, you better watch out. In our 3rd spot today, we have The Ladies. The Ladies is the name given to a group of white-haired ladies that haunt the grounds of Disney. We don't know who they are or why they haunt Disney, but they do. They say that when these ladies appear, a sense of dread can be felt by whoever sees them. So far, they haven't done anything sinister, but we don't know what they want with the park. Also, they show up periodically. They may be there for one day and then not show themselves until several years later. Maybe they're just a friendly group of old ladies that love Disney and still want to visit the park from beyond the grave. Let's hope it's that, and that they're not seeking revenge on Disney and the park goers. Hey, maybe they're Walt Disney's friends and they just meet up with him every year for a cup of tea. Who knows? In our 2nd spot today, we have the Woman in White. The Woman in White is the name given to a lady often wearing a 19th century white gown. She apparently haunts Main Street at Disneyland. But we for sure know that this lady is a nice ghost. Legend goes that on a number of occasions she has guided lost children to the Disneyland Baby Care Center, where they were then reunited with their parents. Reunited and it feels so good. Sorry. So if you do happen to run into this ghost, don't worry. Apparently she's nice. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Heart Attack. Did you know that the Haunted Mansion ride used to be so scary that it gave someone a heart attack? According to a number of Disney workers, they have heard this creepy legend surrounding the Haunted Mansion ride. Legend goes that before the ride was open to the public, they had some people go on the ride and test it out. Well, one woman was so scared that she had a heart attack and died while on the ride. As a result, the ride went under construction for several more years before finally opening in 1969. So apart from the fake ghosts that the ride has, there are also a number of real ghosts that haunt this ride, like this poor woman. Starting off this countdown, we have the lifeguards. So I came across this TikTok and apparently he used to be a lifeguard at Disney.
This is what Disney throws in the water to test their lifeguards. But what they don't tell you is that the lifeguards are told that they have to be constantly watching the water as if somebody's purposely trying to drown their child, because people apparently do that. Disney noticed that people would go there to drown their children on purpose so that they could sue Disney and they could get rid of their child at the same time. So Disney lifeguards are trained to look for that.
That is absolutely horrifying if he's telling the truth. It must be super stressful being a lifeguard at Disney. Their water parks and wave pools are always packed. It's so sad if that has actually happened. In our 9th spot, we have the deaths. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up. You know the drill, because it really helps us out. Also, if you haven't already, go check out the other parts of the series. So Disney is very, very protective of its image. It wants to maintain that it's a safe and family-friendly place. So they claim that no one has ever died at their park, which is clearly false. Tons of accidents have happened at Disney World and Disneyland. Both visitors and workers have lost their lives at Disney. But their claim is 100% true. Now, you're probably thinking, how is this possible? So it turns out what Disney does is when someone does die at the park, employees have to remove the body from the property before pronouncing them dead. That means no one technically died at the park, only outside of the park's gates. They do this all so that families feel safe coming there, because if no one dies there, then clearly it's super safe. But still, this is pretty sketchy if you ask me. In our 8th spot, we have the injuries. Now, if you work for Disney as one of the characters and you get injured on the job, well, guess what? You can't receive medical assistance until you're out of the public's eye. This is just another crazy rule that Disney has. You have to stay in character no matter what. They all do this to preserve the illusion of Disney and magic. I mean, how horrifying would it be if all of a sudden Mickey rips off his head and starts like gushing blood in front of kids? Now, one worker was told before accepting a job as Water Goofy on a Disney cruise, he had to agree that if for some reason he started drowning, he had to be carried away before lifeguards could remove his costume and perform CPR. So he could literally be dying in the costume and need medical attention right away, but Disney won't allow that. Moving on to number 7, we have the repairs. Ever notice how Disney is pretty much always in great condition? I mean, some of the rides are super old, but they don't look it. Well, according to a former Disney employee, every night workers go around the park touching up any and everything. During the day, the workers note if there's any graffiti anywhere in the park or if there's paint chipping anywhere. They write it down and let the night shift workers know, and then they go around fixing it all. I mean, I just took in that I've never seen graffiti at Disney, and that's exactly why. But also, it's a very tedious job. They have to go around the full park and get it all done before the park reopens in the morning. Moving on to number 6, we have the fire accident. So this next story comes from a Disney employee that worked as an outdoor vendor. One night while watching a fireworks show, Tinkerbell got stuck on the wire above the castle since she had been hoisted up because she was flying in the air. But her wire was stuck, and she almost burned to death up there. There was a whole Indiana Jones portion of the show, and in it they had large fireballs. Well, they couldn't stop the show to get Tinkerbell down, so they kind of just left her there and turned off her spotlight so no one could see what was going on, and then they prayed for the best. But like I said before, it's a risk you take while working for Disney. You know, you could be dying and they're not gonna save your life if it interferes with their show. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the cursed ride. Believe it or not, but there is a ride at Disney that all workers believe is cursed. This is the Matterhorn. First off, this ride is responsible for the most fatal and non-fatal incidents. In 1964, a teen on the ride stood up in the bobsled and then died after being thrown out from the ride. Then another time, the ride caught on fire, injuring a family in their sled. And another visitor died after she was launched out of her seat and then hit by another bobsled. More on this later. You think they would have fixed this ride after the first couple of deaths, but no, they blame it on a curse instead. They should just kind of look into the safety of that ride, because I don't know if it's that safe. Coming in at number 4, we have the Deadly Ride. On June 26, 2007, a female guest passed away on the Rock and Roller Coaster avec Aerosmith ride at Disneyland Paris. After the ride was done, people noticed her unconscious. The paramedics arrived, but failed to revive her. Sadly, she passed away. Now, in articles it said that the ride wasn't going to reopen until they found out how and why she passed. But there's no follow-up articles outlining what went wrong on the ride. And it's not like she was 80 years old and had health conditions. No, she was fairly young. I just wish Disney let us know what happened, because the ride has been up and running ever since, but no official statement was ever released. In our 3rd spot, we have Disney's jail. Did you know that Disney has its own specific jail for criminals? Yeah, if you're caught breaking any of Disney's rules, you'll be escorted to Disney jail. Employees describe it as an underground room with bars on the windows. There's no bright colors or Mickeys decorating the area. Now, what causes you to be sent to Disney jail? Well, if you get too rowdy or too intoxicated at the park, if you smoke certain substances at the park, or if you're caught shoplifting. You get the picture. Disney is actually very strict when it comes to this. People caught shoplifting aren't even given a warning sometimes. Instead, they're just sent straight to their jail. From there, you can be fined, kicked out of the park, banned from ever coming back to the park, or all of the above. In our second spot, we have Blake Lively's arrest. Believe it or not, but actress Blake Lively was once sent to Disney jail. Yeah, so basically her and her brother both snuck into Disneyland's park. What they did is put hairspray on the stamps of somebody that came out of the park and then put their hands together, and that transferred the stamp. Then they got to go in the park for free. Except Blake and her brother were caught by an undercover Disney cop and sent to Disney jail. I'm telling you, Disney has way too many undercover cops, like they're everywhere. Which is a good thing for safety, but also kind of a bad thing because, you know, they're watching your every move. And in our number one spot, we have The Battle. This story comes from a Disney employee that worked at a store at the Disney park near the Indiana Jones ride. One time, 30 kids ran into the store and each grabbed a toy sword from the bin, you know, so that they could be just like Indiana Jones. But then the kids started attacking the two workers in the store with their swords. And obviously the workers aren't allowed to like yell at the kids or panic or fight back, so they just let the kids attack them until their parents noticed and called them off. By then, he says his arms were already covered in cuts and bruises and he was bleeding. Yeah, maybe those weapons should be like placed behind the counter or something, you know, so things like that don't happen. Or maybe Disney should just have a better policy, I don't know.
Now we have the terrible situation. So according to this Disney employee, this incident took place on the 4th of July in 1995. On that day, there was a power glitch and all of the rides shut down at the same time. So all of them had to be evacuated, but that led to a pileup at the park. Everyone started panicking and trying to get out, especially this one guest who pulled out something sharp from their bag and started guests so that they could get out of the park. Thankfully, I don't think anyone died that day, but still, what a traumatic thing that they had to go through. In our ninth spot, we have the injuries. One Disney employee shared on Reddit how rough it truly is to be a Disney mascot character. I mean, not only do they have to wear those costumes out in the blazing heat, but they also have to deal with whiny and bratty children and parents. And apparently, a lot of the time, they get injured. One time, a family attacked Pluto and pushed the character into the fountain. The employee suffered from a broken arm. In another instance, a woman playing Mickey Mouse suffered a bad neck injury after a guest kept patting her on the head. This caused the head to fall down and strain her neck. And the costumes themselves weigh 47 pounds. They're blamed for at least 282 injuries. So maybe just be gentle with them. But before I go any further, if you guys are liking this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Come on, you know the drill, because it really helps us out. In our eighth spot, we have the working conditions. It's no shock that landing a job at Disney is very, very hard. Every year they receive thousands upon thousands of applications. But here's the thing, if you do land a job at Disney, you have to be very, very careful because you can easily be fired. Here's a list of ways you could get fired. For starters, you could get fired for coming to work looking unacceptable. Workers always have to have their facial hair neat and trimmed. Their nails always have to be trimmed back, and they can't have any visible piercings. They are super strict about this all. You can also get fired if you post something bad on social media about the company, if you're a face actor and you gain weight, or if you talk while in your costume. I mean, the last one I get, I don't want to be hugging Winnie the Pooh and then hear some old man talking. Anyways, this one employee said that he was fired from Disney after being caught eating a piece of popcorn that fell on their shirt. That's insane. I would be fired instantly if that's the case, because I make a mess while I'm eating and then I just always eat the crumbs off my shirt. Sorry, not sorry. It's just scary how controlling Disney is over their employees. Moving on to number 7, we have the Disney point. Here's another ridiculous thing that Disney employees must do. No matter what, they always have to point with their index finger and middle finger. They can't point with just one finger because that's thought to be rude. So whenever they're showing people directions or something, they always have to point with 2 fingers. In fact, you could be fired if you're caught pointing with 1 finger. Coming in at number 6, we have the bullying. Now, working at Disney is often thought of as a dream job. There are so many characters that aspire to be a character at Disney. I hate to break it to you, but apparently the work environment is fairly toxic. According to multiple employees, there's a lot of bullying that takes place behind the scenes, especially when it comes to the character actors. So there is a sense of hierarchy there. The girls that played the recent popular Disney princesses like Anna and Elsa are thought of as top tier. They're at the top of this Disney social pyramid. Then we have the actors that play the older characters like Snow White, Mary Poppins, Gaston, Peter Pan, you get it. And at the bottom of the pyramid are the mascot characters. Apparently the mascot characters are treated so poorly by other cast members. So yeah, I don't know if I would ever want to work there. Like, I like teamwork and cooperation, not rivalry. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the water. So if you've been to Disney, then you know some rides are surrounded by water. According to employees, that water, although it may not look like that, is extremely polluted and filthy. From people throwing up in there, to trash, to animal poop, it's got it all. And I don't know how often it gets clean. If it looks clean to them, then it's good enough. So maybe think twice before getting on a ride that sprays you with water.
Moving right along on this list to number 7, we have this. The Disney employee had publicly stated that the bad days that the employees endure at the happiest place on earth will kind of haunt you. After he shared a story that a 57-year-old Miami Beach tourist headbutted him. Okay, so the backstory of this? Well, apparently the employee wouldn't let this dude's wife, who wasn't disabled in any way, use the wheelchair line at the monorail station. So instead of asking her, hey ma'am, can you get out of this wheelchair line? He just decided to go with the headbutts. Number 6. Imagine taking your family to the happiest place on earth and leaving the family outing that day with one child missing. It happens more than you think. In fact, on multiple occasions, Disney employees have been caught and arrested for child trafficking. I mean, this just got real dark. And stealing children to sell them on the black market. I've heard of this black market thing. I don't actually know what it is. How are people buying kids? How are people selling kids on the black market? In 2015, 3 Disney employees were caught by police as a part of a huge sting. The reports never stated whether the children were found, but Disney goes on to great lengths to cover this up because obviously, well, it's bad for business. Number 5. Disney accidents. Of course there are going to be accidents at theme parks. Pretty scary to think about. All those kids running around, crazy rides. It's kind of a miracle that these kinds of stories don't happen more often. But a 4-year-old boy back in 2000 fell out of the Roger Rabbit cartoon spin ride and he suffered major internal injuries and was hospitalized with serious conditions. Unfortunately, it was too late for this child, who lived with the consequences of that fateful ride until he passed away in January of 2009. I wonder if Disney paid the medical bills for the family, compensated them for the rest of their lives. That must have just been so heartbreaking. Pretty depressing story, but let's try to move on here. Let me take you guys back all the way back to 1978. Okay, picture this. Winnie the Pooh slapping a little girl. Okay, no, seriously, it actually went to court in 1981, a few years after the event happened. This is like going into a mall and seeing Santa Claus slapping kids. So the girl's parents claimed that Pooh Bear had slapped their daughter, but the Disney employee in the Winnie the Pooh suit claimed that the girl had been tugging on his costume, and when he turned around, he accidentally knocked her over. He actually showed up to court in the costume and convinced the jury that the arms of the costume would have prevented him from slapping a child because they were too short and didn't move in a way possible to slap a small child. Coming in at number 3 on this list, we have this.
Alright, we gotta go find the kids. Dude, where are the kids at?
Another Disney employee rumored that circulated over the years is that there is a jail under Disney World. So if you commit a crime in Disney World, you line hop, you butt in line, you're going to the underground Disney World jail. Well, this is where people breaking rules are kept while they wait for the police or security to arrive. But actually this claim has been debunked. There's a network of tunnels called utilidors, short for utility corridors, that allows cast members and other staff to access different parts of the park and move around without being seen, so as to not break the illusion and take guests out of the immersive Disney experience. But this has been widely criticized for being the exact way that Disney employees from number 6 stole children. They used these tunnels, hidden away from the public. That's how they got away with it. Well, I can't confirm or deny through research, but there's a lot of theories out there that suggest there's a possibility. In at number 2,
a 30-year-old employee dressed as Pluto was killed when he was run over by a Beauty and the Beast float over the Share a Dream Come True parade. According to Disney officials, this is the first fatal incident to a cast member.
Death at Disney doesn't seem to be as uncommon as one would think. I mean, we just talked about that little boy who lost his life. A cast member who dressed up as Pluto named Javier Cruz was about to enter Frontierland in the parade in 2004. Well, the foot of his costume got stuck under the Beauty and the Beast float, but the float couldn't stop fast enough. Cruz was struck and killed before entering the public viewing area. This is such a sad story, and one that you think could be easily prevented, and that Disney would have safe protocols in place since they run a theme park where a million things could go wrong at any given time. Well, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration gave Walt Disney World a $6,300 fine for this incident. Seems like nothing for a company worth billions and billions of dollars. A $6,000 fine because they caused death upon somebody? Something just doesn't seem right now. And number 1 on this list, thank you guys for making it to number 1 on this list, we have See You Later Alligator.
We recovered the remains of the 2-year-old from the water.
The 16-hour-long desperate search for the 2-year-old boy attacked by an alligator at Disney World has come to a heartbreaking close.
Well, not quite the case, but in 2016, that was the last thing a father saw when an alligator attacked his 2-year-old son, pulling him into the water. After a 16-hour search, the toddler was found in a 7 Seas lagoon. It is said that Disney has since taken measures to make sure that this never ever happens again. I hope they took serious actions and actually located the alligator safely and removed this alligator from a theme park, you know, a theme park full of children and people. I mean, with all the technology that we have, why not just have a mechanic or an electronic alligator? There's no point of having these dangerous animals alive just roaming in the park, unless the alligator got in somehow. But why not just build fences all around it to keep everyone inside safe?
Number 10. Fake it till you make it. Disney is often referred to as the happiest place on earth. A pretty big claim, but in their efforts to keep the park so positive, they have a few tricks up their sleeves. If you've been to Disney and skipped out on a ride due to the long wait time listed, you may want to reconsider next time. Disney uses the trick of overestimating wait time so you'll think you waited less than you were supposed to. This keeps guests in line happier for longer. Another thing that may seem totally normal are the American flags located all over the park. The flags located within Disney are often missing one of the stars or stripes. Why would they do this? Well, by omitting something from the original flag, it means they don't have to follow standard American flag regulations, like flying them at half-mast at certain times. I mean, that's pretty smart. It's never a happy thing when a flag is at half-mast, so it's fitting they would try to avoid having to do that. When they say Disney is very detail-oriented, they aren't kidding. The last thing I'll mention that may seem real, but is really just the park making the ride seem crazier than they are, is their use of dramatic effects. If you walk past the Twilight Zone or Tower of Terror, you'll hear a lot of screaming. Some of those screams are real, but some are apparently fake and being played through the speakers to entice more guests to go in. Also, the boats at Splash Mountain don't actually cause such a big splash. There are cannons at the end of the drop that make the huge splashes of water. Real or fake, if it makes the day more fun, I'll take it. Number 9. Underground tunnels. The rumors are true. There is an entire tunnel system under the park. By the time you reach reach the entrance of the Magic Kingdom, you probably won't even notice that you've been walking up a slight incline ever since getting off the monorail or ferry. By the time you reach the iconic castle, you'll have already reached the 3rd floor level. Rumor has it the reason they created the underground tunnel system is because of Walt Disney himself. Walt was wandering through Tomorrowland in Disneyland as a staff member dressed as a cowboy walked by him on his way to his position at Frontierland. One look told Disney that a cowboy dressed in a checkered shirt, bandana, and cowboy boots twirling a 6-shooter looked totally out of place in Tomorrowland. Walt didn't want anything to distract visitors from their magical experience, like an old cowboy walking through the future, so when it came time for Disney World in Florida, they planned for the underground world. Due to Florida's high water table, digging out a basement was out of the question, so Disney improvised by building the tunnels at ground level and creating the world right on top. A former employee said, "Under the Magic Kingdom there are tons of underground tunnels. I could pop up almost anywhere in the park I wanted. Epcot has a tunnel underneath as well." Say what you will about Walt, but he really was dedicated to keeping the illusion alive. Number 8. No breaking character. I think we all know by now that Disney really wants to keep the illusion alive at all times. Having said that, have you ever thought about how the characters who have to wear suits all day don't get super hot? Well, the short answer is they do, but it doesn't matter. Staff members who have to wear large costumes, which I would imagine get pretty stuffy, have to simply ignore the heat and get on with it no matter what. One Reddit user shared a story and said, "A scuba instructor I had once told me that he applied for the job as Water Goofy on a Disney cruise. Water Goofy is simply Goofy who hangs out by the pool. But before he could accept the job, the scuba instructor had to agree that in the event he started drowning, he had to be carried away before lifeguards remove his costume. You know, so they don't upset the children. CPR would not be performed on scene." I mean, I understand no breaking character, but come on. I really think that in this situation, a few upset children would be worth saving the person's life. But hey, Disney doesn't mess around. The rule goes for employees at parks as well. If you're too hot or dying, do it somewhere else. Luckily, each character is always accompanied by a supervisor that helps them know where they need to go and when. So if things were really getting serious, the supervisor is there to help out. At number 7. Too many gators. Walt Disney World is located in Orlando, Florida. One thing Florida is known for is their alligators. While Disney does pull out all the stops in order to keep the park magical, they have had their fair share of run-ins with gators. In 2016, a 2-year-old boy passed away at the Seven Seas Lagoon due to an alligator. Since then, more than 200 alligators have been removed from the parks. The company has worked with trappers contracted through the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission to remove the gators. Most of the pests taken from Disney are euthanized and sold for their hide and meat. Some are also transferred to alligator farms, animal exhibits, and zoos. After the incident in 2016, Disney installed a wall and put up reptile warning signs along waterways throughout the resort. It would definitely take you out of the magic of Disney if you spot a large gator in the water, but they now have a trapper on hand and take care of any sightings. It is Florida, so there really isn't much more the park can do except keep an eye and be proactive. To be considered a nuisance within the statewide nuisance alligator program, an alligator must be at least 4 feet long and pose a threat to people, pets, and/or property. Not long ago, guests spotted a live alligator at Magic Kingdom. Disney can train their performers and dress them to the nines and make all the illusions as real as can be, but the only thing they struggle with is those gators. Unfortunately, even if you are at Disney World, you're still in Florida. Number 6. Strict appearance rules. Dressing as a Disney princess sounds like a pretty good gig, and I think many who have had the job would say that it is. But they may also tell you it's a job that comes with a whole lot of pressure. Working as a Disney princess takes a whole lot more than just throwing on the dress and waving to the guests. All of the performers have to undergo several rounds of auditions, with staff usually having to play multiple characters in the park depending on staffing. When auditioning, everything is being considered: your height, weight, voice, etc. In order for the character to get their voices just right, the performers will watch Disney movies of their characters and repeat the lines back. For most girls, the character's voice is higher than their real voice, so high that some women will go on vocal rest due to strained vocal cords. One former employee shared that despite participating in Disney's college program, she was never able to play a face character because she was too ethnic looking, despite being Italian. Disney favors light hair and skin people so they can play multiple characters. Another employee shares that many of her colleagues have been disapproved of working as face characters members because they've either aged or gained weight. It's not a good job for your self-esteem, it sounds like. Apparently, they bring you in once a month, put you in the costume, and reevaluate you. If you're disapproved due to weight gain, you wouldn't be fired, simply switch to a more covered up character. This has led to employees feeling body shamed or that they need to take unhealthy measures to stay thin. Basically, Disney doesn't play around with continuity. The Cinderella you see in the morning will be the same you see in the afternoon, regardless if it's the same actor or not.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the freaky business. So apparently a lot of people like to get it on at Disney World. Author Leonard Kinsey highlights this in the book The Dark Side of Disney. Basically, he describes the truth about Disney and exposes all their dirty little secrets. So apparently a lot of people have in the companion restroom. It's a single room with a toilet and sink for anyone that wants a little extra privacy, or for anyone that wants to get a little spicy. Like really, come on guys, keep it together. Apparently a lot of people try to get it on during rides as well. If you're caught though, you get the boot right away. You get the boot and no booty. In our 4th spot, we have the chef suit. So in 2010 at Disneyland Paris, 2 chefs committed. Apparently, the working conditions weren't the best. One of the chefs apparently became depressed after the food at the park switched from freshly made to frozen. His note read, and I quote, "I don't want to work for Mickey anymore." This seems like an urban legend, but I swear I'm not making this up. The other chef apparently took his own life because of humiliating treatment at work. Then in 2013, another employee tried to take his own life by setting himself on fire. That's crazy. Coming in at number 3, we have the deaths. So Disney claims that no one has ever died at their park. Clearly that's not true. Like I just finished talking about all the people that have died at their parks. So it turns out what Disney does is when someone does die at the park, employees have to remove the dead body from the property before pronouncing them dead. That means no one technically died at the park, only outside of the park's gates or wherever they were. They do this so that all the families feel safe coming there. I mean, the park must be super safe if no deaths have ever occurred there. Very sneaky, Disney. Very sneaky. Moving on at number 2, we have the workers' deaths. So that's not the only crazy rule that Disney has. They also have a rule as to what should happen if a mascot or character actor gets injured or dies there. No matter what happens, they have to stay in character. Once they are out of the public's eye, that's when they can receive medical attention. For example, one worker was told before accepting a job as Water Goofy on a Disney cruise, he had to agree that in an event he started drowning, he had to be carried away before lifeguards remove his costume and perform CPR. So he could literally be dying in the costume and need medical attention right away, but Disney won't allow it. And in our number 1 spot, we have the cover-up. This is by far one of the biggest cover-ups made by Disney. So on December 24th, 1998, 2 park guests and an employee were involved in a bad accident on the sailing ship Columbia ride. A heavy metal cleat became loose and hit the guests and employee. One of the guests died and his wife was hospitalized. But Disney failed to notify the police. When they were called to the scene, Disney cleaned up the mess as quickly as possible before the police arrived. They also refused to let in outside medical personnel. They were afraid that this would frighten the park guests. 2 things they shouldn't have done. They got a hefty fine as a result of this and were taken to court. The Western River Expedition. The Western River Expedition was going to be a huge theme park attraction at Magic Kingdom. It was planned to be a Western themed boat ride, narrated by an owl by the name of Hoot Gibson. He would guide you through a bunch of scenes like a bank robbery or one with prairie dogs and buffalo, and of course there was going to be cowboys.
Hoot Gibson, like I'm dying at how cute that name is. Now originally the plan was to have a Pirates of the Caribbean themed ride at Magic Kingdom, but Disney thought that this wouldn't be a huge deal for Floridians since pirates are rife in their urban legends. But when the park finally opened up, everyone was super disappointed and kept asking the same question.
Where are the pirates? As a result, they never went through with building this ride. Instead, they figured out they should give the people what they want and make a ride based on the Pirates of the Caribbean. Plus, they realized that this ride would be several $1 million cheaper to build.
So they were like, screw it, let's save the 60 mil and build this pirate ride. Coming in at number 9 is Port Disney. So this one was a huge deal. It was meant to be 443 acres and have a whole marine themed amusement park, a cruise ship port, a marina, hotels, and a whole retail and entertainment district. It's like a whole little city almost. Disney Sea was a theme park that was going to be built there, and it featured every aquatic themed ride you could possibly think of. But considering how big the project was, there was a lot of local opposition and people didn't want the added traffic from tourists, and they also didn't think Disney deserved public subsidies for the project considering they were a very successful private corporation. Then the California Coastal Commission told Disney that, by the way, your plans are great and all, but a huge bulk of the project is not permitted under the Coastal Act, so what are you literally even doing? The mayor of Long Beach also ended up announcing that he didn't think the project made sense for the city or for Disney. Yikes. The project was shelved in 1991 and replaced by the planned Westcott Park that also eventually got abandoned too.
Making our way down the list at number 8, we have the Muppets. Due to the incredible success of MGM Studios' Muppet Vision 3D ride, Disney began working with Jim Henson, the creator of the Muppets, to include more Muppet-themed stuff around the park. They had plans to create a restaurant and ride similar to the Great Movie Ride, but it would star the Muppets. One of the things they had planned was a pizza parlor featuring Rizzo the Rat and Gonzo, but sadly, Jim Henson died shortly after, and the plans to have a Muppet takeover were cancelled. Imagine if the plans did go through though, there would be a Kermit the Frog themed everything. They need to have a Kermit's tea shop though, and have the logo as the, the Kermit sipping the tea meme. That would have been great.
Well, that's none of my business. Filling out number 7 slot is Recess, the first day of school. So Disney hasn't just abandoned a bunch of attractions, it's also shelved a lot of movies. Now, although I didn't have Disney growing up, for the 1 year I did have it, I just overdosed on Recess. The show was just so good, it was a great time, always good vibes. And this movie was meant to be a prequel to the show to kind of show how the whole series even came to be. You'd think they would have covered the origin story in one of the 4 Recess movies already, but evidently they did not.
So I'm assuming that the movie would have shown how the characters met and became friends or something like that. But we will never know, since Disney released 0 teasers or information about the movie before they abandoned the project altogether. Which is a tease if you ask me. Like, you can't just announce a Recess movie and then not go through with it. Either the idea was embarrassingly terrible or they didn't think the movie was going to be a big success. Either way, I wish they shared just a tiny bit of information on this project.
Literally, I feel like it would have done well. Anything Recess does well. Now at number 6 is the Persian Resort. So this project was essentially meant to be a themed hotel built for Disney World, Florida. The hotel was gonna have this 24-foot dome on the main building, which is very typical of like Persian architecture. I would have loved it. It was gonna be located north of the Contemporary Resort and east of the Magic Kingdom, and you could have gotten there via monorail. That's pretty damn cool. Apparently the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, even offered to pay for the whole thing until, of course, the whole 1973 oil crisis happened. The project was cancelled along with the planned Venetian resort and Asian resort. The Shah still offered to finance the project until the Iranian Revolution, after which the project just got the axe for good.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Mythica. Now, there is little known about Mythica. In fact, we don't even know when it was in development. Nonetheless, it was a real concept that was going to be at Disneyland. So apparently Mythica was going to be the name of a land with scenery, rides, and dining, all inspired by Greek and Roman mythology. Okay. As someone who loves Greek mythology, like I'm a huge nerd, I just love this idea. Wouldn't it be so cool? Like you could have rides based on the Greek gods. Like you could have a splash water roller coaster ride for Poseidon or a fire mountain ride for Hades. The ideas are endless. You could even have a section dedicated to Hercules. Like, come on Disney, I got the ideas, you got the money, let's make this happen.
At number 4 is My Peoples. The concept of this movie is so cute, I'm actually quite sad it never got made despite only learning about its existence like half an hour ago. Sometimes you just don't know what you're missing, until it's just right there in front of you. Set in Texas during the 40s, this movie would follow 2 families, the McGees and the Harpers, and as you can guess, the 2 did not get along.
It's kind of a bit like Romeo and Juliet, since the family's children, Elgin and Rose, fall in love, while the families try to keep them apart. So cute. But then the movie does get a bit weird and Elgin starts to create dolls out of household objects. But this is Disney, so the dolls end up coming to life after an accident occurs involving a magic
potion. The living dolls end up helping the families come together, and I genuinely think it would have been such a hit. The movie was scrapped in favor of Chicken Little, and as cute as that movie was when I watched it, I would have loved the Peoples as well, maybe even more, you know what I mean?
Same, it's a good idea. Maybe they thought it was too similar to Romeo and Juliet, but then again, those creepy doll things.
Yeah, literally, household dolls, I love it.
The Smellitizer. Disneyland sees about 18 million guests per year. Disney World sees about 58 million guests per year. That is an insane amount of people. Now, what if I told you that Disneyland mind controls its guests? I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. So Disney uses a device known as the Smellitizer. Basically, it's a device used to pump fumes throughout the park. For example, at the main entrance, they pump out the smell of popcorn to entice you to buy some. In candy shops or ice cream parlors, it will smell sweet like vanilla. They also do this to make their rides more immersive. Like at the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, it will smell like wet wood and sea salt. They are literally controlling what you smell. If that's not a form of mind control, then tell me what is. In our 9th spot, we have the monorail. So at Disney World in Florida, they have a public transit system known as the monorail. Basically, it allows guests to travel free between locations associated with Disney. However, in 2009, a 21-year-old monorail driver lost his life while on the job. He was transporting the last batch of guests for the night when another monorail came speeding towards him. They got into a head-on crash that took his life. After investigating the issue, it was discovered that the crash was entirely Disney's fault. They violated a number of safety protocols and even got fined for this. Coming in at number 8, we have the People Mover. The People Mover ride was a transport attraction that opened up at Tomorrowland at Disneyland, California in 1967. Basically, you would board a small train that would take you on a ride above Tomorrowland from above. However, a month after the ride opened, a 16-year-old boy tripped and fell onto the track. The oncoming train crushed him and dragged his body for a few hundred feet before stopping. That was just a month after opening. But sadly, it's not the only accident that happened. In 1972, a teen fell 30 feet to the ground from the tracks. As a result, she broke her arm, hip, and pelvis. She ended up suing Disney. Then in 1980, another male was crushed and killed by this ride. Over the years, there have been tons of lawsuits from people who have gotten injured on this ride. In our 7th spot, we have the injuries. The Disney mascot actors go through a lot. And I mean a lot. Not only do they have to wear those heavy costumes in the heat, but they also have to deal with whiny children and a bunch of Karens. But what you may not know is that Disney mascots often get seriously injured while on duty. A woman playing Mickey Mouse suffered a bad neck injury after a guest kept patting her head, which caused the head to fall down and strain her neck. The costumes themselves weigh around 47 pounds. They are blamed for at least 282 injuries. Not only that, but they are often touched inappropriately by the guests. A lot of workers have filed police reports because guests would grope or touch them inappropriately. It's not the kids though, it's the adults. A Disney princess had a 51-year-old man grab her breasts. He was arrested and then charged with battery. In another case, the actor portraying Donald Duck got grabbed inappropriately in certain areas by an older woman. Those poor mascots go through so much. Making our way down the list, number 6, we have the creepers. It's scary, but a park full of children attracts the wrong kind of people. Over the years, Disney has had a real problem with predators at the park. And I don't know what kind of background checks that Disney is doing on their employees, but obviously they aren't thorough enough. Because over the years, a number of park employees have been arrested after being inappropriate with the park guests. Since 2002, 42 employees have been arrested because of this. That's way too many people.
Starting us off at number 10 is Lake Buena Vista Airport. If there is one thing that Disney does best, it's branding their empire. And once upon a time, an airport, of all things, was a part of the Disney dynasty. You see, when Walt was first trying to create Epcot, the community, not the theme park, he wanted a regional airport with 4 runways. This vision did not quite come to fruition, but what we did get was the 1971 Buena Vista Airport. This boutique airport, if you will, was only used by 2 airlines and was meant for Disney guests and employees, and the biggest feature it became known for was that When You Wish Upon a Star played after landing thanks breaks to small grooves in the runway. However, cute factor aside, despite Walt's grand plans, the dream began to die in the 1980s with the construction of the monorail. The airport, now surrounded on either side, became dangerous to use, and so eventually no more flights were allowed in or out. Nowadays, the abandoned airport is mostly used for storage and parking rather than an attraction for the public, but it's said that Walt's abandoned plane is hidden somewhere on the lot, and who knows, maybe his ghost is still in there. Next up at number 9, the Wonders of Life Pavilion. I don't know about you, but when I think about Disney, I don't usually jump to health education. Well, as it turns out, the plan for the original Epcot included a pavilion that was to be dedicated to life and health, which eventually made its debut in 1989. The main attraction of this pavilion was called Body Wars, which was a ride that aimed to simulate what it felt like to travel through the human bloodstream, which, had I had the chance, I would for sure have wanted to get on to live out my Magic School Bus dreams. However, despite running for nearly 18 years, the Wonders of Life Pavilion closed without any explanation in January 2007. At the time of its closure, there were of course tons of rumors. However, the true reason has never been verified. It was just boarded up and closed off, which is definitely a bit suspicious, but could there be something they are hiding from the public that's locked away? I guess we'll never know. Next up at number 8, Pirates of the Caribbean. As the legend goes, during the construction for the Florida version of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, a welder named George was killed in an accident. Now, the exact accident that happened to George does vary depending on who you ask. Some say he was crushed by a falling beam, while others say that he fell from the burning city portion of the ride and died as a result. But no matter how he died, everyone can agree on one thing: that he remains haunting the ride and terrorizing anyone who dares disrespect him. It's said George will stop the ride if he hears you say that you don't believe he's real, and superstitious cast members will greet George when they arrive and say goodbye when they leave to try and stay on his good side. So, with that being said, while it's not technically prohibited, it's not exactly somewhere you want to mess with, so if you do decide to take your chances, make sure you don't piss off George. You never know what might happen. Next up at number 7, Haunted Mansion. This next one is a story from a visitor at Disney World in Florida while riding the Haunted Mansion who claims they witnessed a ghost and allegedly have the photo to prove it. Quote, "As you'll see in the photo, it appears as though a young boy is peeking his head out of the doom buggy and looking directly at me. Not only was he not there when I took the pic, there wasn't a boy of this age within 20 people in front of me in line. And as you can see, he's only a few doom buggies in front of me. Not only that, what's he doing looking at me? There is no flash and no visible light coming from me. It's all infrared and invisible to the naked eye. So could it be that the Haunted Mansion is in fact haunted by real ghosts? Just tread carefully if you try to find out for yourself. You never know what they could want from you." At number 5, painful costumes. Becoming a character from such loved Disney movies and meeting kids that think you're the real deal would definitely be fun. But I think the amount of fun you have as a staff member really depends on which character you are. Former character employees told Mental Floss that they've been basically beaten up by visitors and little kids, but the real wear and tear comes from the fur costumes. Apparently every character employee starts out as a fur character, and these costumes can weigh as much as 47 pounds. In 2005, the last year this data was available, the heavy suits were blamed for 282 injuries. One former fur character shared that while in costume she was punched, put in a chokehold, and had her shoulder partly dislocated and bruised 3 fingers. This performer eventually went to physical therapy for her shoulder and needed knee surgery thanks to the weight of the costume. That year, character performers across the 4 parks that made up Disney World reported 773 injuries total. 49 of those cited the heavy costume heads as the case of injury. Another performer once had to go on temporary disability leave after a guest picked her up and shook her while she was playing Minnie Mouse, resulting in whiplash from the weight of the mouse head. Of the 773 injuries, 107 were the result of some sort of aggressive behavior, whether intentional or not, from guests. I guess some Disney visitors get a little too into the fantasy and forget there are people inside working those suits. Luckily, they have rules in place of how long a performer can be in costume at a time before needing a break, which is usually no longer than 45 minutes. At number 4, poorly treated princesses. The princesses in the park are one of the most magical parts of visiting Disney. Decked out with the dress, hair, and accessories, tons of kids and adults are able to make their dreams of meeting their favorite Disney princesses in real life come true. Unfortunately, like with most nice things, there's always someone right there ready to ruin it. Many employees, usually the women characters, say they've experienced inappropriate sexual behavior from park visitors. I know there are unfortunately few jobs that women don't experience this behavior, but the difference with Disney is they can't break character. Reddit user Little Bones wrote, "I was a Tinkerbell performer for Walt Disney World about 3 years ago, and I can't count how many times people would ask me what's under my dress or tried to touch me. I would always shame them to my PhotoPass attendant, their families, and the people in line by loudly exclaiming, 'You want to know what's under my dress? Well, there's pixie dust, of course,' or 'This man's a pirate, he's trying to reach the pixie dust that I keep under my dress,' and they'd walk away in shame like the creepy a-holes they are. It's pretty scary that they can't do much about the harassment, but it's even more scary that there are people at a place full of children sexualizing and literally touching a fictional character made for kids. It may be where dreams come true, but even Disney can't weed out all the creeps at the door." Number 3, shared undies. Alright, this one is seriously my least favorite thing I learned about Disney when making this video. Aside from the fabulous park, action-packed rides, and all the snacks your Disney heart could want, one of the best part about the park is the opportunity to meet your favorite characters in person. Disney cast members go above and beyond to ensure guests visiting the park are experiencing the magic. Well, back in the day, according to reports, Disneyland used to force cast members to share underwear as a part of the costume for work. Ew. The report stated that cast members inside the costumes had to wear regulation company-issued underwear. If you were to wear your own, you would create a visible line that the guests could see. So instead of just giving the cast members their own pack of the proper undies to take home at the end of each shift, employees had to hand in their underwear for washing. This was the way for a while, but the washing of the underwear was so bad they had to stop using the system in 2001. The report said when they started receiving dirty and smelly underwear at the start of their shifts and contracting nasty conditions like pubic lice and scabies, people started to suspect that the underwear garments weren't actually being washed very well. You think? Like, I actually want to gag. Imagine getting ready for work and putting on someone else's dirty undies. And they aren't just dirty undies. They were worn for an entire shift in a heavy costume in the heat, dirty. Disney finally declared that while they still had to wear the uniform underwear, cast members could wash them at home. Number 2, real bones. One thing I know for certain about Disney is they try super hard to make everything look as real as possible. A place that was no exception was the Pirates of the Caribbean ride located in Adventureland. The park was so committed to making things visually appealing that even fake bones used for the skeletons on the ride were not good enough. That's right, when the Pirates of the Caribbean ride opened at Disneyland in 1967, each and every skeleton on the attraction was made of actual human bones. The ride opened just months after Walt Disney's passing and was the last he personally oversaw. One thing, however, the Imagineers couldn't recreate was skeletons. The technology of the time wasn't sophisticated enough to make skeletons that the company felt met their standard of realism. So as a solution, they decided not to fake it and get the real deal. They went right to UCLA where they were able to get real human skeletons for the ride. Probably not what the people who donated their remains to UCLA's medical center imagined their bones would be used for, but hey, I guess chilling at Disney in the afterlife wouldn't be too bad. If being around real human remains gives you the creeps, don't worry because they didn't last forever. Eventually, as fake skeletons and technology improved, a new generation of Imagineers were able to replace the real ones. After being replaced, the real remains were later returned to their countries of origin and given a proper burial. Today, Disneyland says there are no longer any human remains on the ride. That being said, some people are still unconvinced. Jason Petros of Ears Up Disney podcast has a blog post detailing where he believes there are 4 remaining instances of, well, remains. I can't see why they wouldn't remove all the old bones, but hey, you never know. Disney does love its Easter eggs. And at number 1, spreading ashes at Haunted Mansion. The Haunted Mansion is one of Disney's most famous attractions, located in Liberty Square at Magic Kingdom Park. While it is called the Haunted Mansion, it's not actually haunted, and they keep the scare factor pretty mild. That being said, the mansion does hold a pretty haunted secret. Apparently, a lot of people like to scatter the ashes of their loved ones at the park, but more specifically inside ride the Haunted Mansion. I mean, if you're gonna spread ashes at Disney, the Haunted Mansion does seem like a pretty fitting place. It sounds a bit wild, but in 2018 a report by Wall Street Journal confirmed this fact and even stated that custodians at the park use code words to tackle said problem. HEPA cleanup is used named after the special vacuum filter needed to suck up very fine particles like ashes and their residue. A story about the Haunted Mansion ride states that people believe that by scattering the ashes on the ride, they join the ghosts and live in the theme park forever. Considering Disney is referred to as the happiest place on earth, I understand why some people would have their wish to be scattered there. However, every time someone sneaks ashes into the park, whether it be in medicine bottles, purses, or makeup compacts, without proper permission, it violates the health and safety code and they have to shut down the park because of it. One Disney custodian told the Wall Street Journal, "The Haunted Mansion probably has so much human ashes in it that it's not even funny." Yikes. The Haunted Mansion may not have been haunted when it first opened, but at this point, it just might be.
Number 10. Virus outbreak. Now, I know what you're thinking. Duh, they caught that virus in 2020, but no, I'm talking about a different one. At Disneyland, between December 17th and December 20th, 2014, visitors to the park were exposed to measles, resulting in an outbreak that affected the residents of 8 US states as well as Mexico and Canada. The California Department of Public Health was first notified of a suspected measles case on January 5th, 2015, and by February 11th, 2015, at least 39 individuals who had visited at least one of the 2 adjacent Disney parks during the exposure period had become ill. In addition to this likely direct exposure, secondary and unknown transmissions were numerous, resulting in at least 125 cases within the United States by February 11th, 2015. The specific outbreak was declared over in the US in mid-April 2015 after 42 days with no traceable transmissions and 147 having been affected within the United States. This measles outbreak though resulted in no known deaths. Number 9. Ashes spread. There's a very popular urban legend that Disney World is full of scattered human remains. World is full of scattered human ashes, particularly in certain parts of the park such as the Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, and It's a Small World. It's been proven that guests frequently release human ashes within the Disney parks, and Disney understands that this could be a cathartic process for those grieving, but it's important to realize that this violates Disney's rules and also local laws about scattering remains. Disney has specifically spoken out telling the Wall Street Journal that this type of behavior is strictly prohibited and unlawful. Not only is this against the park policy, but any guests spreading ashes will be escorted off the property. This is taken very seriously and is referred to by cast members as a HEPA cleanup incident since it requires a special cleaning protocol to remove the ash residue. When guests do succeed in scattering ashes on attractions, there are a lot of repercussions. Not only could they be banned from future entry, but it's also disruptive to others enjoying the park. These attractions and areas need to be shut down for technical difficulties, and it delays other people's experiences. It's said that this happens at least once a month. Number 8. Leaving a guest paralyzed. In 1983, James Higgins, who was 18 at the time, fell off Space Mountain at Disneyland and was paralyzed from the waist down, and he suffered from brain damage. He tumbled out of a speeding car and was found unconscious under the tracks of Space Mountain. He tried suing Disney and asked for more than $7 million in damages and compensation. His attorneys claimed that the restraining lap bar used on the high-speed roller coaster type ride at the time of the incident was improperly designed and could have allowed a rider to remove it. During the trial, the jury was taken to the park to ride Space Mountain, and several of the ride's cars were brought into the courtroom to demonstrate their use. A physicist called by Disneyland attorneys said that the lap bar appeared to be defective, but added that gravity probably would have kept the rider from falling out if he followed park instructions. Park attorneys said that James was intoxicated at the time of the incident and trying to show off for friends when he tumbled off the ride. In the end, the jury found Disneyland was not liable for his injuries. Number 7. Harassment of workers. It seems like wherever you work in the customer service industry, you are bound to deal with customers who go too
too far. Unfortunately, Disney is no exception, and it happens more particularly to female employees who are dressed up as face characters like those who walk around dressed as a Disney princess. A lot of them have experienced harassment, and an ex-Disney park employee wrote on Reddit about her experience. She said, "I was a Tinkerbell performer for Walt Disney World about 3 years ago, and I can't count how many times people asked me what was under my dress or tried to touch me inappropriately. I would always shame them to my photo pass, attendant, their family, and people in line by loudly exclaiming, 'You want to know what's under my dress? Well, there's pixie dust, of course.' Or, 'This man is a pirate. He's trying to reach the pixie dust that I keep under my dress.' And then they'd walk away in shame like the creepy people they are." Now, since face characters are never allowed to break character, there isn't much they can do about the harassment, which is pretty scary.
Filling our number 3 slot is Dick Tracy's Crime Stoppers. So if you're unaware, Disney planned on their 1990 film Dick Tracy to be a massive hit. Plot twist, it absolutely wasn't. But before its release, the company had huge hopes for the franchise, and Imagineers were planning out the ride Crime Stoppers. It was meant to emulate a high-speed chase throughout Chicago with Tommy guns and the whole works. A press release was even put out announcing the oh-so-revolutionary ride, and then when the film tanked, they just tried to pretend like the ride was never even a thing, just sweeping it under the rug and pretending it just didn't exist. At least the Tommy guns didn't go to waste, though. They ended up paving the way for the Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger spin shooting adventure, so yeah, you win some, you lose some.
In our second spot, we have the Museum of the Weird. The Museum of the Weird was going to be the ultimate inception. It was going to be an attraction inside of an attraction. So it was going to be at the beginning of the Haunted Mansion attraction. It was going to include odd stuff like a chair that stood up and talked, along with other weird things collected from around the world. This concept was created by Walt Disney himself after thinking of all the unusual concepts one of his Imagineers came up with. He then figured he would combine them all in the Museum of Weird. But sadly, the plan was cancelled after the Haunted Mansion attraction was turned into a ride-through attraction. However, some of the designs are currently featured at this attraction, including the wallpaper used on the walls in the Corridor of Doors scene. And in our number 1 spot, we have Lost in Scaradise. Love the name of this. So this one was going to be another Disney film. Any guesses as to what sequel of a classic Disney movie was going to be called Lost in Scaradise? Monsters Inc. That's right, before Monsters University, Disney was working on releasing a film where Mike and Sully visited Boo for her birthday in the human world, but they discovered that the family moved, and so the whole film surrounds them trying to find Boo. Okay, I personally am a really big fan of this film concept. Like, that's such a cute idea. I would have loved this film if it got made.
I honestly watched Monsters Inc. when I was small, but I don't remember any of it.
I love the movie. I love it. Put that thing back where it came from, oh so help me, so help me. I love it. It's so good. It's such a good movie. It's so good.
That's
Sorry.
so cute. But the idea was cancelled and replaced with Monsters University, also one that I have not seen. Now the reason being was because Disney shut down the studio that was making it, Circle 7. But this company was created originally to create sequels for Disney-owned Pixar movies, but after it was shut down, Pixar went on to create Monsters University.
I still want another Monsters Inc. movie, but I'm feeling that the end of the movie, they find that Boo and her family was just on vacation the whole time and they all lived happily ever after. Pretty sure I just guessed the ending. If not, then you're welcome, Disney. I just gave you a great ending idea.
At number 10 is America Sings. So back in 1974, Debbie Stone was an 18-year-old hostess at the Disneyland in the America Sings attraction. Now, for this attraction, you would be seated in a theater facing a stage, and during these shows, it was the job of the hostess to stand on the left-hand side of each stage to greet the audience. But tragically, one night when the last show got over and the stages were shifting position in between the 45-second interval, a guest from the adjacent theater heard a blood-chilling scream. When he and the operators rushed to the scene, they were horrified to see Debbie Stone crushed between the walls of the two theaters. After the catastrophe, the attraction was shut down for 3 days so they could adjust safety protocols, but kind of shockingly, with only a few tweaks, weeks, they opened it right back up to the public. Now, the good news is that eventually, by 1996, the attraction was shut down for good. However, the theater was redesigned and reopened in 2015 as the Tomorrowland Expo Center, and many still fear that the building is haunted by the ghost of Debbie Stone. So, it's best not to go snooping around the area. Next up at number 9, Superstar Limo. Once called the quote, worst ride ever by theme park tourists, Superstar Limo was a dark Disney attraction that did not last long. At least not in a physical sense. Right off the bat, the concept behind the ride was strange. The original idea for the ride was to put guests in the position of celebrities trying to evade paparazzi in a wild, high-speed ride through Hollywood. However, while the ride was being installed in 1997, the infamous and tragic death of Princess Diana, who died in a car crash while her driver was trying to evade paparazzi, put a sour taste on the whole project. Following this, Disney tried to pivot by slowing down the ride and adjusting the storyline, and finally opened it up to the public in 2001. But even with the changes, it received such poor response from guests that it closed only 1 year later and has remained one of the least well-received attractions in Disney history. That being said, it has since been replaced by an attraction based on Monsters, Inc. that uses the same tracks and vehicles, and some think the ride still holds bad luck and avoid it at all costs. Moving on to number 8, Space Mountain. So obviously, Space Mountain is not a prohibited ride at Disney Park. I just want to get that right out of the way. So obviously, Space Mountain is not a prohibited ride at Disney parks. I just want to get that right out of the way. But what it does have is a spooky legend that may make you question if you ever want to ride it again. As the legend goes, a ghost who goes by the name of Mr. One Way, often described as having both red hair and a red face, has been reported to hang out in the queue of the attraction and make conversation with other patrons before suddenly disappearing right before their eyes. Then once the ride begins, it's said he will appear as if out of nowhere and take a seat on the ride. But right before the final tunnel at the end, he is once again gone in a flash. Those that claim to have sat down beside him say they've been in the middle of a conversation with him only for him to vanish, and that while he himself might not be out to get ya, the idea of talking to a ghost is scary enough to think about. So unless you're looking for a new ghost companion, this is probably one to avoid. Coming in at number 7, the extraterrestrial encounter. Usually when it comes to Disney parks, it's a pretty safe bet that everything is gonna be family friendly. That is kind of their whole deal after all. However, it's not always the case. Back in 1994, inspired by the hit franchise Alien, Disney decided to try something different, and it was interesting to say the least. The ride had sort of a soft launch in 1994, but former Walt Disney chairman and CEO Michael Eisner remarked that the ride wasn't intense enough, and so he sent his Imagineers back to the drawing board. After some thinking, they produced a ride to include a gory pre-show that ended in a disfigured alien, loud noises, strobe lights, and with a script that many referred to as having the familiar feel of a childhood nightmare. And isn't that just what you are looking for when you go to a Disney park? As is expected, the ride was controversial at the time and received a lot of backlash for being too frightening for younger audiences, especially considering there was reportedly no signage to warn patrons of what was going to be waiting for them inside. Eventually, there was enough backlash over the attraction that it was shut down and replaced with Stitch's Great Escape in 2004. However, that shut down in 2018 and Disney confirmed it is closed for good. Though some swear the property where it used to sit is haunted, and maybe that's what was so scary about it all along. Moving on to number 6, the Haunted Mansion. For those who didn't know, Disney has a very strict policy when it comes to spreading your loved one's ashes. The policy being that it is absolutely 100% prohibited to do so. Now, the official reason behind this policy, according to Disney, is to ensure the safety and cleanliness cleanliness of the park environment and to maintain a respectful atmosphere for all guests. However, some believe the real answer might be a little more interesting than that. Legend has it that at Disneyland in California, a little boy's mother spread his ashes in the haunted mansion without getting the park's permission to do so, and ever since then he's allegedly been heard crying out for his mother at the end of the ride. So while the ride itself might not be prohibited, it very well may be haunted by the ghost of a boy. So it's creepy nonetheless. Moving on to number 5, Nara Dreamland. Located in Japan, Nara Dreamland opened its doors to the public back in 1961. Now, from the get-go, the plan for this park was to be a part of the Disney franchise. In fact, Kunizo Matsuo, president of the Matsuo Entertainment Company, apparently met with Walt Disney himself to discuss the attraction, with the plan of it being an official Disney park in mind. However, allegedly, after disagreements over the licensing fees for using the Disney characters, there was a falling out and Nara Dreamland was officially not an affiliated park. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what the hell is this doing on a Disney list? Well, despite its lack of official Disney representation, it sure as hell resembles a Disney park if I've ever seen one. Or rather, it did prior to its 2006 closure. Attractions like a large Matterhorn mountain, a castle, and even a monorail could be found, and for many years it remained a ghost town, overgrown with nature and filled with an eerie presence. This of course caught the attention of Disney and horror fans alike for a while, but you had to be incredibly careful, as it was said visitors could be fined and arrested for trespassing into the abandoned property. However, as of 2017, the former theme park was demolished, but make no mistake, it's still not somewhere you should go poking around. While it was abandoned, some that snuck in complained of a feeling like they were being watched or haunted by an angry entity, and it's believed that those same ghosts still haunt the grounds where it used to stand. Next up at number 6, Walt's apartment. Depending on how much of a Disney fan you are, you may or may not be familiar with a certain apartment that's located above the firehouse on Main Street at Disneyland. The reason for this apartment was initially nothing terribly exciting, but simply because Mr. Disney himself wanted a place to stay that was on the property to make those late nights and early mornings a little easier. Now, to be fair, Walt's apartment isn't really prohibited anymore. You can go see it if you like, but the question is, should you? While nowadays a light is always left on in the front window, according to the legend, this wasn't always the case. It's said that one day a cast member looking after the apartment tried to turn the light off before leaving. However, after leaving the building, she looked up only to notice that the light was still on upstairs. Confused, but assuming she must have forgotten, she went back up to turn it off and came back downstairs. But once again, it was on. So she went up again, unplugged the lamp, only to find it once again still somehow back on by the time she came downstairs. The final time she went up, she heard an angry voice saying, quote, "I'm still here." And she was so frightened, she ran away and never returned back to work. Who could that voice have belonged to? No one knows for sure, but the light remains on so as to never anger it again. Coming in at number 5, Dolly's Dip. In 1984, Regina Young, or Dolly as she liked to go by, was tragically killed while riding the Matterhorn. It seems there was a malfunction in Dolly's seatbelt, resulting in her falling out of the bobsled and being struck by an oncoming sled. The family eventually settled with the park, and the park simultaneously changed the kinds of seatbelts used for that attraction. However, the park says that the two events are unrelated. Now, of course, the Matterhorn remains a public ride, so you're free to take your chances on it, but be warned, it's said that the ghost of Dolly haunts the ride, specifically at the location she was killed. Referred to as Dolly's Dip, visitors and employees alike say they have been haunted by her presence while inside. Some say they can feel her watching them, while others claim to have seen a full-bodied apparition. But unless you're looking for a little paranormal action on your next Disney trip, then I would suggest lining up for a different ride. Coming in at number 4, Nara Dreamland. Located in Japan, Nara Dreamland opened its doors to the public back in 1961. Now, from the get-go, the plan for this park was to be a part of the Disney franchise. In fact, Kunizo Matsuo, president of the Matsuo Entertainment Company, apparently met with Walt Disney to discuss the attraction with the plan of it being an official Disney park in mind. However, allegedly, after disagreements over the licensing fees for using the Disney characters, there was a huge falling out and Nara Dreamland was officially not an affiliated park. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what the hell is this doing on a Disney list? Well, despite its lack of official Disney representation, it sure resembles a Disney park if I've ever seen one. Or rather, it did prior to its 2006 closure. Attractions like a large Matterhorn mountain, castle, and even a monorail found, and for many years it remained a ghost town, overgrown with nature and filled with an eerie presence. This, of course, caught the attention of Disney and horror fans alike for a while, but you had to be incredibly careful, as it was said visitors could be fined and arrested for trespassing into the abandoned property. However, as of 2017, the former theme park was demolished, but make no mistake, it's still not somewhere you should go poking around. While it was abandoned, some that snuck in complained of feeling like they were being watched or haunted by an angry entity, and it's believed that those same ghosts still haunt the grounds where it used to stand. Coming in at number 3, nighttime trespassers. In 1966, 19-year-old Thomas Guy Cleveland tried to sneak into Anaheim's Disneyland by scaling the park's outer fence and climbing along the monorail track. Now, why he was trying to sneak in after hours, we don't really know. But nonetheless, his devious plan all came to a halt when a nearby security guard noticed him. At first, he approached to get him to leave, but then he noticed a monorail was making its way along the tracks, and so he began yelling at Cleveland to get out of the way. At this point, Cleveland jumped and landed on a fiberglass canopy beneath the track to try and clear it. But unfortunately, the canopy did not keep him safe. From there, the 25-km/h monorail struck Cleveland and dragged his body for 40 feet down the track. By the time the monorail had made a complete stop, his body had been torn to pieces. So, whatever you do, for the love of God, don't try to scale the wall and sneak in at night. It might be the last night you ever have. Coming in at number 2, Discovery Island. Originally called Treasure Island, after the 1950 film of the same name, this Disney park opened to the public in 1974 as a premier tourist destination for Disney fans of all ages. Accessible only by resort boat or Disney cruise lines, the original park revolved around the theme of shipwrecks, secret caves, and buried treasure. However, in April 1976, Disney decided to rebrand to the new Discovery Island. This rebranding waved goodbye to pirate boats and treasure and instead welcomed rich flora and fauna, hoping to invite a more relaxing atmosphere, all while simultaneously showcasing and protecting Florida's local wildlife, which, to be fair, it did for a while. Discovery Island was accredited by the Association of Zoological Parks and Aquariums, and at its peak housed over 500 endangered species. However, much to the public's surprise, Discovery Island was abandoned in 1999. The animals were relocated to a new park, Animal Kingdom, and the island park has remained a ghost town ever since. Now, while it's sort of unclear as to why it shut down, some reasons include wild roaming alligators, along with deadly bacteria found in the park's waters. And while all of that might sound intriguing, I promise you, you do not want to try and visit this one. Walt Disney World has banned all outings to the park. In fact, you're not allowed to get within 50 feet of its shoreline, and legal action can be taken if you're found trespassing. And that's not just a threat. People have actually been banned from all Disney parks for life for attempting to visit. So yeah, if I were you, I would steer clear of this one. And last up in our number 1 spot, River Country. After opening as the first water park at the Walt Disney World Resort in 1976, River Country was a popular destination for many years. And out of all of the places on this list, this one definitely has the wildest backstory. Controversy around the water park started to bubble up back in 1980 when a boy tragically died there due to an amoeba that was found in the water. The amoeba in question managed to kill him by attacking his brain and nervous system. However, Disney was absolved of the blame due to the fact that that specific amoeba could have bred in any fresh water. But the story's not done yet. Fast forward 2 years to 1982, and another boy died at River Country, this time from drowning on the Wuppenhaller slide. This time Disney was sued by the family of the boy, who claimed that there was no proper warning about how deep the water was. And a lifeguard testified, admitting that they had to routinely save dozens of people from that slide on a daily basis. Even so, the park remained open. Then in 1989, another boy drowned there. However, it wasn't until the events in September of 2001 went down that Disney was forced to close the park due to the nationwide tourism cutback. From that day forward, the doors have remained shut and the park has been closed off to the public, though some believe that those who have lost their lives still roam around haunting the grounds.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Whispering Statue. Well, this doesn't sound terrifying at all. Okay. Over at Disneyland, Florida, there's a bronze statue of Goofy. He's 10 feet tall, he's shiny, he's sitting in the sun all day long, so he's probably boiling hot to touch. Well, rumor has it, if you sit next to Goofy on that bench for long enough, the guy might start whispering sweet nothings in your magic Mickey Mouse ears that you bought for $79. This statue can be found near the Lady and the Tramp restaurant over in Tonystown. Number 9. Caution, do not pull rope. Do not pull the rope. Don't do it. Normally when we see a sign that tells us not to do something, we listen, especially if it's near Indiana Jones Adventure Ride at Disneyland, Florida. You don't want to be running away from any rolling boulders, you know what I mean? Can't be poking around ancient cursed artifacts, my friend. This one's waiting for you in the queue area, so next time you're in line and you're bored out of your mind, maybe do pull a rope or two, see what happens. After the first tug, you'll hear a voice. A nearby excavator will tell you to cut it out. It's kind of funny, whatever. If you pull it a second time, you'll hear loud noises, crashes, and a big bang. It's actually pretty alarming. Apparently it scares a lot of kids, which is pretty fun. And it's all your fault. That's right, all because you pulled that rope. Better keep that line moving. Sounds like a heap of hurt waiting for you. Number 8. Musical manholes. Disneyland is full of magic. There's animatronics that move on their own, statues that whisper in your ears when you don't expect it. There's music in the air and also in the ground, apparently. In Disneyland, Florida's Toontown, there's a big fountain with Mickey leading an orchestra. Now these instruments aren't doing much, that is, until you stand on a tune hole cover. That's when corresponding instruments start to fire up. So if you have enough friends or family members, you could start an entire orchestra for guests at the park, and they would have no idea it's because of you and your tune manhole cover. There's probably many of you who don't know this and accidentally stepped on a tuba cover. You're like, what was that? Number 7. Hidden Mickeys. When Walt Disney himself said, "I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse," I got to thinking, which mouse? Was it Stuart Little? Who is he talking about here? Was he talking about the mouse with an ear on its back? That's always a fun one. Or Mickey Mouse, of course. The iconic 3 circles that puts your imagination to the test. If you're visiting Disney Orlando anytime soon, keep an eye open for the hundreds of Mickey Mouse symbols hidden around the park. Yep, they're hidden in the walls, the floors, paintings. In total, there's rumored to be over 1,000 hidden Mickey Mouse logos. Number 6. No more dragons. Disney's Animal Kingdom was originally supposed to have even more animal goodness. Can you believe that? Even more magic. The park originally planned for 3 types of areas, 3 different themes. Animals that are real, animals that are real but now extinct, and animals that are mythological, like unicorns or even dragons per se. Evidence of this can be found looking directly at you when you enter the park. Right in the Animal Kingdom sign in front of the park, you can see a dragon representing the never finished Beastly Kingdom. That'd have been a lot of fun, Beastly Kingdom. You're like, is it real? I don't think it's real. Number 5, Cinderella Suite. Cinderella's castle at Disney World is the main attraction. Without that castle, it would just be a regular theme park. Of course, the castle is a smaller scale than a real medieval one, obviously, so it's a surprise to find out that there's actually a real hidden suite in that castle. And yes, it's quite magical. To get there, you'll need to take a pumpkin carriage elevator. How magical is that? And then in the actual suite, you'll find 2 beds and a pull-out couch. Yeah, nothing more enchanting than a pull-out couch. That's fun. That'll probably be mine if I went with friends for sure. There's stained glass windows, a fireplace to keep you warm in Orlando, Florida. But I almost forgot the most important detail. You need to be invited. Of course, you can't just waltz in there. It's not an Airbnb, get out of here. You have to win a contest in order to even get in the building. To be honest, I don't think I'd want to spend the night here. It doesn't look cozy at all. Looks kind of scary and boring. Pull-out couches, also, no way.
Moving on to number 3, the Matterhorn. The tragic death of Regina Young, or Dolly as she went by, is one of the better known disasters in Disney's history. So much so that the area where she was killed has been nicknamed Dolly's Dip, and visitors and employees alike say they've been haunted by her presence while inside. However, did you know that she was not the first person to die due to riding the Matterhorn? Reportedly in 1964, a teenage Mark Maples, accompanied by his friend, unbuckled his seatbelt and attempted to stand up in his bobsled while nearing the peak of the mountain. But sadly, Maples lost his balance and was thrown from the sled to the track below, fracturing his skull and ribs and causing internal injuries. Now, unlike Dolly, he did not die right then and there, although that in itself is kind of shocking considering the injuries he sustained, but he did pass away 3 days later due to the accident. So some say that while Dolly might be the most talked about ghost on the ride, she is not the only one. And unless you're looking for a little paranormal action on your next Disney trip, then I would suggest another ride. Moving on to number 2, People Mover. There are lots of different ways to get around Disney, and since the 1960s, one of these ways has been the People Mover. The original system, built in 1967, was essentially a transportation attraction in the futuristic Tomorrowland, where guests could board small little trains that ran on elevated tracks and get a sort of grand tour of the park. However, despite its innocent sounding premise and the fact that a new version remains at Magic Kingdom, the original attraction was actually the site of not 1, but 2 deaths. The first time happened in 1967, only 1 month after it had opened, and a 16-year-old boy died while jumping between 2 moving People Mover cars as the ride was passing through a tunnel. Reportedly, he stumbled and fell onto the track before being hit by an oncoming train that tragically crushed him beneath its wheels and dragged his body a few hundred feet before it was stopped by a ride operator. Then years later in 1980, in an almost identical accident, an 18-year-old was crushed and killed while jumping between moving cars as the ride entered a tunnel. Many say that the ghost of the men haunt the People Mover to this day, and even worse, some fear it could happen again. So whatever you do, don't try to jump from car to car. And last up in our number 1 spot, Tom Sawyer Island. While there might not be an official legend in regards to Tom Sawyer Island, many still claim that they feel a deep feeling of unease or shivers whenever they're visiting. And as it turns out, there is potentially a real-life tragic story to explain why. On June 22nd, 1973, an 18-year-old Bogdan Delarue and his younger brother Dorian decided they wanted to stay on the island a little while longer. So while staff escorted visitors onto the boats to return to the park, Bogdan and Dorian jumped a fence and hid in the woods. However, by 9:30 that night, the brothers decided it was best to head back home, but worrying they would get in trouble if they called for help, they decided to swim back. But because the younger brother did not know how to swim, Bogdan tried to carry him on his back. But about halfway across the river, Bogdan slipped and drowned, leaving poor Dorian to doggy paddle until a ride operator found him and brought him to safety. And shockingly, he was not the only one. Another boy named Philip Strain also lost his life near Tom Sawyer Island. In Philip's case, he and a friend snuck into a cast members only area along the river, stole an inflatable rubber maintenance motorboat, and decided to take it out for a spin. But unable to control the boat, they struck a rock near the island and were thrown into the water. His friend was able to travel back to the shore for help, but sadly by the time they arrived, Philip had died. So could there be some sort of curse attached to Tom Sawyer Island? I'm not sure. I'm keen to find out.
Number 4. underground tunnels. In a place like Disney, there has to be room for employees to take a breather, right? That much time in character, all those high fives. I get it. I've done mascot work for a theme park. It's hot, it's sweaty, it's a lot of yuck going on inside that mask, right? It's not the easiest job. But they're human too. They need to take breaks, they need to clock in and clock out. Where does that magic happen? Well, this needs to be away from the public eye, right? You can't have people watch as Mickey takes his head off to go for a smoke. No way, obviously. So instead, Disney has hidden underground tunnels to move around the park without worrying about staying in character or getting caught in large crowds. During the early park days, Walt Disney himself saw a cowboy from Frontierland walk through Tomorrowland to get to his post. And it just didn't make any sense, you know? It took the magic out of the air. More than fair. So in turn, he made 392,000 square feet of underground tunnels, and that ought to do the trick. Yeah, and also, yes, they look creepy. There's zero magic in these tunnels. Number 3, teacups. The teacup ride is one of the best hidden gems in the park. The Fantasyland Spin Fest is worth waiting for if you know which cups to run for. And yes, it turns out it does matter. You always see kids running, you're like, does it matter? They're all the same. No, it definitely does matter. I was wrong my whole life. There's 18 teacups in total, and the speeds all vary. Here's a hot tip. The orange teacup with diamonds and the purple teacup, they go the fastest. All right, so pass that on. Pass it on to your family and friends. There you go. There's 2 teacups with hearts, and yes, they might be lovely, but these ones are the slower teacups. So if your date is like, oh, these ones look romantic, don't do it, okay? We gotta go to this one. We gotta go fast today. We gotta whip. That wheel in the center, we're not here for fun, okay? We're here for speed. We're clocking in numbers today. We're hitting G-forces. Number 2, family of the day. If you're a family of early birds and you also love waiting outside of amusement parks, well, have I got the place for you, my friends? Here we go. Every morning there's a loud opening ceremony known as the rope drop. This happens when the park first opens, right in the morning. The only way to get picked, according to insiders, is to have matching Disney gear and to arrive early and show energy. Nice. So no crying at 7 a.m., okay? This is Disneyland, okay? This is magical. Don't ruin our day. The family gets a tour of Main Street before it opens to the general public, and you get to walk around with Mickey and the gang all the way to the Magic Kingdom train station. And then they get to see the morning crowd all arrive and gather below. Major Willy Wonka vibes going on with this one. I don't know if I'd want a morning tour with all the mascots as they're waking up, yawning, giving me high fives. I'm all set. And finally, number 1, the spitting camel. If you thought Gold Tooth Goofy was fascinating, well, buckle up, Imagineers. In 2019, this secret location was actually removed. And honestly, good thing. Gone, but certainly not forgotten. That's why I'm here. Since 2001, the grounds of Magic Carpets of Aladdin were refreshing, to say the least. In Adventureland and Magic Kingdom, you'd be walking near the attraction when all of a sudden water would hit you in the face from somewhere. From something. Yeah, it turns out that camel that sits in front of the ride, he would sometimes squirt water out of its mouth randomly into some poor soul's retina. How lovely is that? Yeah, some lukewarm Florida pipe water hitting you directly in the pupil. How magical is that? There you go, grab a hat on the way out. As of 2019, the spitting camel has since been removed, but fear not, there's still the other camel. Let's just hope this one doesn't gain the ability to, you know, project swamp water at passerbyers. That would be nice if it just stayed put.
Number 6, people taking their own lives. With a place like Disney, it's shocking that there are so many people who go there to end their life. Unfortunately, this has happened many times over the years. The main place for this is at Disneyland in California and is at the Mickey and Friends parking structure. The first account happened in 2010 when a 61-year-old man jumped from the top floor of the parking structure. He left behind a note explaining his personal issues were the reason why he did that. In 2012, a 23-year-old man was found near the northwest corner of the parking structure and was pronounced dead at the scene. It was investigated as if the man had taken his own life at the time, but there were no witnesses. In 2016, a 40-year-old man jumped from the parking structure just after 2 a.m. He was rushed to UC Irvine Medical Center and pronounced dead at 3:08 a.m. And now the most recent death took place in December of 2022, where a 51-year-old elementary school principal jumped from the top floor and was pronounced dead at the scene. These stories are all so sad, and if you ever get these feelings, please know that there are people and resources to help you. Number 5, fell out of a ride. In September 2000, a guest fell out of the Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin ride in Disneyland and suffered serious internal internal injuries, cardiac arrest, and brain damage after being dragged underneath the car. The speculated reason for this was a malfunction with the lap bar. It was said by witnesses that the bar on the cart to strap the rider in did not lock in any position, there were no safety straps, and the bar did not go over the rider's lap. Now, according to investigators with Cal/OSHA, the state safety agency, the lap bars in the ride's cars are raised and lowered manually by the Disneyland ride operator and worked independently of each other. Disney said park officials believe that their employees followed all the park procedures, including those for lap bars. The police and the Disney president said that there was no malfunction with the ride to cause this. The guests lived, but there was a serious delay between the time of the incident and when medical emergency personnel were contacted, leading Disney to review and change their policies. Unfortunately, it was too late. The guests lived for 9 more years with the consequences of that fateful ride until they passed away in January 2009. Number 4. Drownings. In June 1973 and in June 1983, guests drowned in the River of America's attraction in Disneyland, both after violating the rules. The first incident involves 2 brothers who stayed in the park after closing. They stayed on Tom Sawyer's Island past closing time by hiding in an area that is off limit to guests. When they wanted to leave the island, they tried to swim across the river, though one of them didn't know how to swim. The older brother attempted to carry his brother on his back and drowned halfway across. His body was found the next morning, while the younger brother was able to stay afloat by dog paddling until a ride operator rescued him. The second incident involved a man drowning by trying to pilot a rubber emergency boat from Tom Sawyer's Island, which he and a friend had stolen from a restricted area of the island during Disneyland's annual grad night. The boat capsized and he drowned. Both individuals were intoxicated at the time of the incident, and the victim's mother sued Disneyland for allowing her inebriated son onto the premises, but the lawsuit was unsuccessful. Number 3. Hit by another car. In 1984, 48-year-old Dolly Young was riding the Matterhorn bobsled in Disneyland when her seatbelt was unfastened. She fell out and plummeted to the track below, only to be hit by another car and get dragged along the rails before the ride was stopped. Due to this, she got decapitated. She was pronounced dead at the scene due to her massive head and chest injuries. Afterwards, an investigation found that her seatbelt was not buckled. It's unclear whether she deliberately unfastened her belt or if the seatbelt had malfunctioned. Since then, the section where she was struck on the Tomorrowland side of the mountain has been known as Dolly's Dip, and park employees claim that she still haunts the ride. Former ride operator named Kristen, who worked at the park from 1989 to 1995, claimed that she could feel a supernatural presence while operating the Matterhorn, and that other staffers told her they had seen a ghost while on the job. She said, "I worked that ride for several years and I never saw her, but I sure did feel her." Number 2. Being crushed. In 1974, an employee named Debbie Stone was crushed to death between a rotating wall and a permanent theater wall in the America Sings attraction in Disneyland. At around 10:30 p.m., when the last show got over and the stages were shifting positions in between the 45-second interval, a guest from the adjacent theater heard a blood-chilling scream. When he and the operators rushed to the scene, they were horrified to see Debbie Stone crushed between the walls of the 2 theaters. To this day, no one knows exactly what went wrong, but there have been numerous theories. Some state that Debbie may have been inclining towards the adjacent stage to talk to a fellow cast member, or she may have attempted to jump from one stage to the other, or she may have been distracted and stepped backwards without noticing. Either way, this death was just tragic. And coming in at number 1 is not caring for disabled guests. Disney is supposed to be a fun place that includes everyone no matter their differences, but it seems like the park didn't take their disabled guests into consideration. In 2009, the ride It's a Small World Holiday in Disneyland broke down while the other guests were evacuated off the ride, while this guest was not, as he was in a wheelchair. The guest was stuck in the ride's goodbye room, the final setting of It's a Small World Holiday, for 30 to 40 minutes before being evacuated. In addition to being wheelchair bound, he also suffered from panic attacks and high blood pressure, and these things were aggravated by the blaring Christmas carols due to them being unable to exit the ride. Rather than calling firefighters to evacuate the guests, Disneyland staffers waited for the ride to be fixed. When the guest was finally able to leave the ride, it took 3 hours to medically stabilize them at a Disneyland first aid station once they were rescued. The guests sued Disney for its inadequate evacuation procedures for disabled guests and for not providing proper warnings for those who could not evacuate during a
ride stoppage. In March 2013, a jury awarded the man $8,000 and the safety key was introduced. Well, that's all for our list of the top 10 dark events that took place at Disney parks. Hearing these definitely made me question Disney's all-around happy atmosphere. Have you ever had a bad experience at Disney? Comment down below and make sure to like and subscribe while you're down there.